children, I'll tell you the news. Don't worry about the names or dates, you already know it's true. Your doctor hates your baby, the prime minister's a ghost, and all them folks are sailing here 'cause they're in love with boats. Superfoods can save us from all our evil sin. JFK and Elvis own a bar in Wisconsin. Vaccinations were created by the CIA to steal votes from Bernie Sanders and turn your babies gay. So click the link you think you'd like and get tooled for a fight against those lefty fascist communists who are leaning too far right.
Hi and welcome to another fake newscast. I'm Paul.
And I'm Dominic Cummins. Only kidding, he's too busy dismantling democracy in the UK. Jokes. I'm Jerry.
That's a fine Christmas joke.
Yep.
That's why they call you the cracker.
So we're getting all festive and up in here.
You the cracker. So they don't call you the cracker.
I mean, some people do.
Oh, no doubt.
But they are racist.
Yeah.
Take me back to my slave owning days. It really hit me where it hurts.
I really wish you had another time. Wish I had a soundboard just because I've done a record scratch here when you said that.
So yeah, we're recording an episode today. Me and Paul. We were kind of inspired by an article by friend of the show, Adam Ramsey, that he'd written on Open Democracy back in 2014.
Yeah. So round about the time that there was just before the general election. Just before the general election, just round about the time of Scottish independence, round about the time of Brexit, there was a lot going on round about that time. You know what I mean? The political stance in the UK was discussed, like where they were in Europe, where we were going to be moving forward to, whether or not Scotland was still going to be part of it. It had all been on the tip of people's tongue round about that time.
But what it did was it compared the UK to Europe, Western Europe, largely in a largely unfavourable manner. It was sort of making the point that we are kind of the outlier in terms of things like wealth inequality, infant mortality, state pension.
Yeah, essentially most the certainly well known, but most of the countries in Europe were had better results for pretty much all these set of key facts that we were looking at. So essentially renewable energy, wealth gap, inequality, wage gap, childcare costing. There was other things on that list.
A whole bunch of different things. So we had kind of shared this article on our social media, and a few folk had said, well, that was 2014 though. And we were like, well, yeah, fair point. I wonder where we're at now, 5 years hence, or heading towards 6 years hence. So we decided to go through all the points that were made piece by piece and sort of look at where we've come from then, and also kind of how accurate the claim was to begin with. So yeah, we're just going to work our way through it in order and sort of see what we're coming up with. So
can I just also say at this point that before he listens to it, because he will almost definitely listen to it because of the subject, that if Adam does listen to it, I'd quite like him to chime in, like if he wants to either drop us over something on Twitter, if he wants to discuss what we've discovered and stuff and get on the show or whatever, give us a shout. I mean, we're going to obviously harass him on, we'll send him a DM and all that anyway to let him know, because as Jerry said, he is a friend of the show. But just in this open mic scenario, if he wants to discuss any of the stuff, then yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, and also to let everybody know, you can find us on our website at www.notanotherfakenewscast.com.
We'll stop doing all that, haven't we? We'll stop telling people these things. You can also get us on social media, Twitter and Facebook, Instagram if you feel mad, and we may or may not reply to Instagram, but Twitter and Facebook you can get us at PGMcast, or just search notanotherfakenewscast.com.
And yeah, you can find us on patreon.com, www.patreon.com/PGMcast, and if you like what we're doing, you can chuck us a buck.
Or you can just drop us an email at info@notanotherfakenewscast.com. People do that from time to time. Some of the emails they send us are fucking bonkers. Other emails are quite informative. So yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's kind of get into the piece. So one of the first claims in the article was that at the time, apart from the Benelux countries and Cyprus,
Is that the countries that manufacture cough syrup?
no, that's Benelin. You're thinking Benelin.
That's the Benelin countries.
Apart from those, the UK, every other country in Europe basically used more renewable energy than the UK. So we are looking now at the most recent statistics, which is from 2017, and showing us what the 2020 target is, and we find that largely that has not changed.
No, in the grand scheme of things, it's really not. Now, what I will say is, in a lot of the stuff that we've looked at, and I imagine Adam probably came up against a very similar thing when he was compiling the last piece of information, we are near the end of 2019. So, in a lot of cases, 2017, 2018 is the last collection of data for the, like, in a lot of cases, 30, 40 countries that we're talking about. It's a massive data collection exercise, do you know what I mean? So, these graphs...
However, we know that when this was written in 2014, by looking at the links, some of the latest available information at the time was from likes of 2011, 2012, 2013. Yeah. So it still roughly shows a 5 to 6 year.
Oh, no, certainly. That's what I mean. Just when we start mentioning to people this, like 2017, people are just like, oh, but there's been 2 years since then. There has been, but literally nobody has all that data yet. And in a few years' time, we'll be able to do the same thing again. But yes, certainly the UK is still scraping the barrel.
The only person that is also, or the only country, sorry, that is also now worse than this is Malta.
Stevie Malta.
Big Stevie Malta.
Yeah, but I mean, so there is. So even though we're probably, if you were to look at the graph and you were to look at what our current target is, we are 2/3, give or take, towards our target. Really, aren't we?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to gauge in the graph because of where the numbers and dots and lines are, but about 2/3 of the way there.
2/3 towards the target, but almost every country in Europe is doing far better than us in terms of the share of energy that they're producing from renewable sources, which is particularly galling when you realise that in terms of potential for renewables, we have pretty much the largest potential in Europe.
Well,
right now.
actually, I'm going to, Jerry, see if you pull up the link. It's something that I was reading when we were doing the research here, so... Not even that one. I've got another one that I'll show you if you give me. It'll be on your laptop. That's some good audio. But see if you go to just the Wikipedia article about the, you know, that one there. Yeah. So Scotland, it states in this article, obviously not fact checked, but it was just something that I wanted to highlight. It states that Scotland has the capability of producing 10% of the whole of Europe's renewable energy for wind and tidal.
Renewable energy or total energy?
Renewable energy for wind and tidal. There's a breakdown of so here it is when you get to the UK. The last set of lines, prospects for renewable energy for Scotland in particular. So essentially, going on what Jerry was saying there,
it's actually bigger than that. It's
10% of Europe, but I think it's 30%.
25% of the estimated total capacity for the European Union for both wind and tidal power.
Is it?
And up to 14 gigawatts of wave power potential, which is 10% of EU capacity.
So it's the wave power potential, it's 10% of the EU capacity. But so Scotland has the ability to produce like a metric ton of the renewable energy in the whole of Europe. And right now, so that's upsetting. Now, what I will say regarding this, regarding what we're talking about, this year, 2019, the UK, it was the first time the UK had produced, so in a quarter, so the third quarter, which is like July, August, September, we produced more energy through renewable sources than we did through non-renewable sources, through traditional sources.
Fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And it's the first ever quarter since the UK's first electricity generating station opened in 1882, where that has been the case.
Which I find a lovely padding piece of information in this, because it's like, I know, but like they probably weren't like, well, we're going to put in the solar, and just like, nah, make it cool. You know what I mean? Like, that's no really, but I get what it, but yeah, so it's the first quarter that's ever happened, and actually I think somewhere, as ever, all the articles will be there, but I think somewhere now we've got the potential to producing about 40% our electricity from renewables, which, as it turns out, means that we are, for that part of the statistic, we're actually doing quite well for our carbon tax and stuff, their carbon targets for 2050. But unfortunately, there's a whole pile of other things that are stopping us from being able to reach that. But we'll not get into that in this article, I don't think.
We're only producing about 10% of our energy across the whole year from renewables, and that compares pretty poorly to a lot of countries which are like Slovenia, Romania, Lithuania are producing up to 25%. Then you've got plus 30% for likes of Austria, Latvia, Finland, Sweden are over 40%. Finland are nearly 40%.
Sweden are over 50.
Sweden are over 50%, and European Union as a whole is about 18%. So we're way behind the average even.
Yeah,
and basically, it sort of bears out almost exactly what the case was in 2014. That's still where we find ourselves. So it's still looking like a pretty accurate stat, that one.
Well, I'll also say just quickly at the end there that even though we are producing, even though for the last quarter we produced more renewable than we did from fossil, from fossil, which
and here we have Donald Trump.
Well, for fossil, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's a negligible amount. Essentially, in both cases, it was 29 terawatts. Where it was 29.5, I believe, of renewable and 29.1 of fossil. So it's not like there was some massive gap between the two of them. It was just producing about the same. You know what I mean? But that was just the first time in history that it's overtaken.
So the next sort of point in the article was talking about public ownership and the fact that most countries in Europe have a much higher level of public ownership in their economies than the UK does. We looked at kind of rail for this. The fact that almost all of the UK's railways are now owned by other European countries.
It's something we spoke about a few times.
Yeah, it is. And basically, when you look at it now, you've got German State Railway, Deutsche Bahn, operating 4 British railways, including the London Overground and the Grand Central Line to Sunderland. You've got 7 UK railways, which are partly operated by the Dutch State Railway, Nederlandse Spoorwegen, including Merseyrail. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce that.
Is that the name of the beer I'm drinking right now?
I don't know. It might be. No, it's Goose Island IPA. It's not even close, Paul. It's not being ridiculous. The West Midlands Railway, 7 railways are operated fully or partly by French State Railway SNCF, including Transport for Wales and the Thames Link. So out of roughly 30 UK railways, only 6 are fully owned and operated by private companies or by the British government authorities. So we're in a situation where, and we've spoken about this, like you say, loads of times before, we are subsidising loads of other countries to have cheaper rail fares. We'll have a little bit of a look at those rail fares later.
We discuss that.
But essentially, it's hard to go through on a sort of percentage level in various industries which parts of other countries' economies are publicly and privately owned. It varies from country to country.
It's certainly an episode in its own right, and it's something that we might discuss certainly closer to B-Day, which we'll call Brexit, right? B-Day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like,
because it's somewhere you'd wash your arse, right? But closer to B-Day, we'll maybe do an episode on it where we can actually discuss this in more breakdown, like what it actually means. But essentially, you've got a poll that's based on public opinion.
Public opinion in the UK on privatisation versus nationalisation, yeah, and it was done by YouGov in 2017, and it was looking at various sectors of the economy and whether they should be run in the public sector or the private sector.
So this is essentially also between 2 general elections. This will be just off the back of 1 general election and going into the second.
I think it was released off the back of Labour's manifesto pledges for nationalisation or renationalisation of several industries. So
this is just coming up to the 2017 general election?
I believe so, yeah. When we look at all the sectors, the one which had the most public support for public ownership was the police.
Whoop, whoop. That does all the police.
That's right. So 87% of people polled thought that the police should be in public hands, which seemed reasonable. 10% of people didn't know. Oh, I don't know.
3% are up for private police,
Which is mental.
which is one of the most psychotic things I've ever heard in my entire life.
For the NHS, 84% of people polled were in favour of them being in the public sector. 10% of people wanted the NHS to be privatised, which was kind of surprisingly high.
Is that any correlation to how is there 10% in the UK that are richer than everyone else by any chance?
Well, the richest 10% are.
So there we go. They're cool with it.
They've already got private medical insurance.
Exactly.
The armed forces, 83% of people believe that they should be publicly owned. 14% don't know, which means that a kind of scary 3% of people are again quite happy for the armed forces to be privately owned.
I don't know if the 3% that are happy for the armed forces to be privately owned, which is scary, is as scary as the idea that 14% of the people that were asked are just like, I don't know. Like, I can see plus and minus for both scenarios. One, owned by the government, aren't going to show up and murder me in my sleep. Other, owned by a private company working for profit.
I think that 14% just didn't know what the question was. I don't know what armed forces are.
I mean,
I don't know what my name is.
See if you look, now this is a spoiler for a lot of what's coming ahead, but see if you actually look down through this entire poll and you look for the numbers before, other than the 5% that didn't know for the NHS, it was like 10, 14, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 16, 15, 17, 18, 18, right? So it looks like there's a strong 10 to 14% of idiots that were asked across the board who just like, I don't know. Like, they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to be getting asked.
So schools, 81% of people thought that schools should be run in the public sector. 6% thought that schools should be run in the private sector. Now, I don't know if that means that they think some should be. If the 81% think that no school should be private, it's hard to tell, obviously, without diving
Also, I'd
deeper.
say those 6% were possibly just said keep in private school.
Royal Mail, 65% of people believe that Royal Mail should be back in the public sector. So this is the point at which public opinion really starts to diverge from reality. 60% of people in the UK believe that railway companies should be in public ownership, which again is against what we have. 59% of people believe that water companies should be in public ownership. Now, they are under public ownership in Scotland, but not for the rest of the UK.
And interestingly, London, I believe, because Thames Water, I believe, is a private company, or certainly a component of it is a private company. They have particularly awful problems with their water, with their pipes and stuff. Now, granted, I will say I've gave them stick and stuff like that before, but I do also, because I'm not like an idiot, I do also appreciate that a lot of the water lines that have existed in like for Thames Water, like in London, there's a lot of stuff that's been there for quite a long period of time. It's been as long as there's been running water in the UK, it's essentially existed in London. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot of old scabby infrastructure that does exist, and I'm aware that the upheaval and sheer intake that they would uptake that would have to be involved to actually do a repair on that type of work.
But isn't that because the private company that's been in charge of it have let it just fall into disrepair and not done enough maintenance?
Oh yeah, I would imagine there's definitely a chicken and egg scenario there where they took it over as a private company, so one would argue as such they should be repairing it and keeping it up to date. But like I said, I'm not under any illusion that there's also a massive the massive financial impact and the amount of work and the actual being able to do some of the work just in general because where it is, do you know what I mean? Like, because of the growth of London over the top of where a lot of this existed. I get why somewhere like London has got into such a state of disrepair, but I would also argue that like we don't see those problems really in Scotland across the board, and it is owned by the state.
Yeah. The BBC, 58% of people in the UK believe that the BBC should remain in public ownership.
We'll discuss the BBC in our next episode.
53% of people believe that energy companies should be publicly owned, which obviously massively goes against the situation that we have now. Energy poverty is a thing in the UK.
what I would say here, that especially the ones that we spoke about, so Royal Mail, Railway, water companies, ignore the BBC in this scenario, energy companies so far, all of these points, so all of leading up to the election in 2017, all of these points were believed by more than 50%, between 50 and 60% of the population in the UK.
But they didn't vote for it.
But even more so now. So,
Yeah.
I mean, because pretty much all of these were, if not highlighted specifically in the manifesto, were spoke about as key goals by both Labour and McDonnell. By both Corbyn and McDonnell as their aims, regardless of whether or not they were individually named in the manifesto on their UK tours. They had mentioned all of these, so it's quite interesting that with such a large percentage of people that are being asked, and such a large percentage of them who want it, the idea that sorry, just fucking movie hobo, but the idea that that so many people voted against it is quite interesting.
Well, it is, and I think obviously that's the point kind of being made in the article here, is that public opinion in England is largely in favour of public ownership, and yet, you know, that's something that we just don't seem to get coming through in terms of the governments we elect now. That might well be because people were focused on the last election as a kind of single issue election, and they were more interested in Brexit than anything else. And I guess in 5 years' time we'll see how that's borne out in the next election, if it lasts, you know, if we get through 5 years without another one.
Well, in our last interview with Darren McGarvey, he spoke about something very similar, that if you ask people on the street where they stand with a lot of the policies in the manifesto for Labour, lots and lots and lots of everyone pretty much in the whole of the UK agrees with most of the key points of the Labour manifesto. So, and then why then are they not being voted for when their manifesto seems to meet up entirely with the opinions and ideologies of the people who are in the UK? Like, so it's a weird thing that has to be addressed.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess who Labour choose as their next leader and how they decide to drive forward in terms of policies will have a huge bearing on that. Whether or not we get a Labour government offering similar policy offerings, or whether they move more towards the centre, whether they keep the left-leaning manifesto but change their marketing and their strategy, all of these things are, you know, remain to be seen. We'll see what happens next.
I think probably the hardest is just this. Again, we'll talk about this in the other thing, but the hardest leaning left member of their cabinet, you know what I mean, like, is probably McDonnell. He's always suggested that he's stepping down.
Yeah.
And Corbyn stepping down. So I don't think it will shock anyone if the next politician is slightly less left than certainly Corbyn was perceived and McDonnell is, because that just seems to be the way that it's going to go now.
Yeah, and I think after such a resounding defeat, that's probably sensible. But again, we'll see what happens next. So the next claim in the Open Democracy article was that Britain was the fourth most unequal developed country on earth at the time.
Is that for equality between men and women for wages?
No,
or just be equal?
I think just it was talking about wealth inequality.
Right, so wealth inequality, yeah. So disparity between rich and poor and stuff like that.
Exactly. So we've got a few interesting kind of articles and stuff to look at in relation to that. One of the first is the stats which are just recently out this month from Eurostat/EU, which was the top 10 richest and poorest areas in Northern Europe. Only one of the richest areas in Europe was in the UK, and that was, of course, inner London.
It's literally as close to centre Europe. Like, I mean, it's the last bastion of England before you end up, because it's like on the way to the Eurocentral.
Yeah.
And
Interestingly, though, so just to give you a quick rundown of the other richest places in Northern Europe, you were looking at Luxembourg, Brussels, Hamburg, Ile-de-France, that's in France, Groningen in the Netherlands, Stockholm,
they've got a syndrome.
Oberbayern in Germany, Vienna in Austria, and Darmstadt in Germany. Now, of the 10 poorest areas,
You're so fucking lucky that you got by Vienna there without pausing, because if you had paused when you said Vienna, you were going to get an entire Ultravox thing.
I would quite have enjoyed that. I do like a bit of mid-year in my life. So
Only a wee bit though.
only a wee bit. Mid-year. Sorry, that's terrible. I'm glad you enjoyed that.
I just got the idea of you fucking midget, you're fucking stood at the side of a faggy when you're camping and fucking midget ears are flying around you, biting at you.
Singing
like,
Vienna.
oh, fucking fuck off if you're is gone.
Yeah. So, of the 10 poorest areas in Northern Europe, 9 of them exist in the UK, which is kind of mildly terrifying.
It's fucking really upsetting. We're the 5th richest economy in the world. Ask any cunt that supports Brexit, they will fucking tell you we're the 5th richest and the only reason that we're poor is because Europe's taking all the money and giving it to like fucking Vienna and Luxembourg.
Well, and interestingly, some of these areas which are poorest are ones which have benefited the most from EU membership.
Oh,
so
is that number one at the top? Like, I mean, I know
West
that sounds
Wales.
like a fucking stupid question, but people can't see the thing, and I don't know if it's going from 10 to 1 or 1 till 10, like in that order.
no.
So number one is
West Wales,
which we know because we slated the ever-loving shit out of them for when they voted for Brexit, even though they received loads of funding from the EU. They are now the poorest and will not be getting any EU money.
Yeah, and Cornwall have a similar situation. Durham and Tees Valley is the 3rd poorest in Northern Europe. Lincolnshire's the 4th. South Yorkshire is the 5th. Shropshire and Staffordshire is the 6th. Lancashire's the 7th. Northern Ireland as a whole is the 8th, and that's including that 1 billion that the DUP got. Hainaut,
Did they get it by that point?
yeah, this is this year.
Oh, is this year? So this is since then?
Yeah,
So they were $1 billion poorer before that?
must have been.
I bet they were higher up the list.
I mean, I've been there a lot.
So have I. So have I.
It's lovely. Hainaut
It exists.
in Belgium is the only one outside of the UK that was come in at number 9, and then number 10 is East Yorkshire and North Lincolnshire.
Can I just say big up? No Scotland on that list?
Well, that's what I was just about to say. Like it does kind of show you that something's being done right,
and
perhaps.
the thing is, North Lanarkshire,
Pretty poor.
pretty poor. You're from North Lanarkshire, I see it, it's rough as fuck. So those lads in West Wales,
How often,
Double
Paul,
brutal.
have I said to you, and when we're having conversations amongst
let's
our
compare Scotland to the
friend
rest of the
group.
UK.
No, but like I'm like, you know,
No, I know,
because
I know,
people
I
talk
know.
about poverty and all the stuff that's going on up here, and I'm like, I'd really love you guys to go and spend a month living in some of the places in England that I've been.
In all fairness, Jerry, there's lots of people that I discuss politics with in the pub in Wishy that I would really like you to fuck off to England as well. So I get that. I get that.
But so that's an illustration that yes, there certainly is still a big problem with wealth inequality in the UK, but you know, how can we quantify that in terms of other developed countries in the world in a manner which was kind of discussed in the article?
Well, see, while you're bringing that up, I would just like to point out again, like I kind of alluded to, that people will tell you how we're the 5th richest economy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that information that we've got there regarding the poorest areas in Europe
Mm-hmm.
becomes even more upsetting, because that means that the disparity is much greater. Like from a percentage point of view, like for us to be the 5th richest, like per capita, essentially, the problem that we then land with is if we're the 5th richest per capita, that means that there's people who are right fucking rich to offset that massive amounts of poverty that we've got in the country.
Yeah.
And I think this is where a lot of people fall down when they discuss it. It's just like, I don't see this, I know you don't see it, but for us to be hitting all of these markers, for us to be hitting all these things that say we've got all this money and you know the deficit's going down or whatever and all the other bits, it then means that there must be areas in the UK that are of such drastic poverty and such drastic fucking mistreatment that then all of that money is offset. You know what I mean? Like then the offset happens with people who are so staggeringly rich. Like, I'm now just moaning at the fact that the disparity is there.
Well, and we can look at the levels of inequality within the UK.
Bring up the right screen now.
Yeah, I know.
Just-
I'd already checked it. The Institute for Public Policy Research in 2018 released a bunch of stats which were covered by The Guardian about the levels of inequality in the UK, and they stated at that point that the UK was the 5th most unequal country in Europe. And it kind of showed that just what you're talking about in terms of the difference between high earners and low earners. At that point, the average household income for Britain's highest earning decile, so the top 10%, versus that of the lowest 10%, was 6.8 times.
6.8 times?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say percent. 6.8 times?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And the average household wealth for Britain's richest 10% is 315 times that of the poorest 10%.
So just so we're clear, and we'll talk about it in a wee bit when we talk about some other things, but when I was doing some numbers, when was this report done?
This was in 2018.
Right, so 2018, give or take, 2018, 2017, the average weekly wage, or the standard weekly wage that was expected to be made by most people in the UK was around 500 quid. Right, I mean, actually, obviously in the poverty areas it's no, but around 500 quid. So we're essentially suggesting then if that's the middle of somewhere you're talking about 1,500 quid to £3,000 a week is what the top end are making. If the low end are making, going to the idea that somewhere in the middle, do you know what I mean? So if the low end are making, like, say, 100 or 200 quid, middle's making about 500, 600 quid, the top end are making like 1,500 quid because it's 6 times different. You know what I mean? Like,
reality is that it'll be far more highly weighted towards the top earners. I mean, it sort of shows that inequality has worsened since 2008. It shows that inequality between the richest 1% and the rest of the country is continuing to rise. It's worsened by weak wage growth and rising living costs, growth in property values in recent years as well. So when we look at what's called the Gini coefficient, we can look at that across all the OECD countries, which is essentially what the article was saying, was that the UK is the 4th most unequal developed country on earth. So the OECD is the sort of measure that you would go to look at that. And actually, they're not quite as bad as that.
but what I would also say just quickly is, see, for those who are listening to this, like, I'm not saying it's fucking easy, right? But we'll have all the links. See on the with a lot of the OECD data based on the numbers, based on numbers to do with things like either wage disparity or wage equality or anything to do with that. In a lot of cases, they have interactive graphs on their website that have got different drop downs, so you can like drill down into the information, years, months, weeks. You can change certain variables, you can see the years and stuff like that. Like, what I'm essentially saying is, if you're finding this piece of information interesting, if you're going to use it in an argument when you're arguing against someone who you believe is incorrect in their stance, jump on the OECD data website, because their graphs are actually very, very, very comprehensive, and you've got the ability to drill down into information if you're willing to make the effort.
Anyway, yeah, and I would totally agree with that. Statista is another good one to have a look at. OECD, like, and you can get all the source material and stuff as well. So if you want to get the actual raw data to play around with it yourself, if you're a bit of a stats wizard, then that's the place to go. So in terms of being the 4th most unequal, we have improved our position since 2014 to being the 8th most unequal member of the OECD.
That's alright, isn't it?
Which, well, it does mean that there's around 20.
Means we're twice as
odd.
more equal as we were.
But there's still 20 countries, including countries like Korea, New Zealand, Latvia, Israel, Japan, Greece, Russia, Portugal, Australia, Italy, Estonia, Canada, Ireland, Luxembourg, Switzerland, Germany, France, Poland, the Netherlands, Austria, Hungary, Finland, Belgium, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Czech Republic, Slovenia, and the Slovaks, which are all much more equal than the UK is.
Now, would people not argue, because I've seen this stupid argument made by Americans when you bring up certain things similar, that's because all the rich people live in the UK?
I mean, there is an argument that, but why do they live in the UK? Why is the UK so popular? Yeah.
No. But what I mean is that's the same argument that they do. Like, and there is actually a bit of logic behind it. Like, so, see, if, for example, you're comparing somewhere like the UK per capita to somewhere like the US per capita, but the thing is, US has Silicon Valley and has New York and has certain areas of specific affluence. You know what I mean? That then changes the entire country because you've got a place where all the billionaires live. Now, we then have to drill into the reasons why.
But then you need to go, okay, well, they're bringing in all this money. Why aren't they using it to the betterment of all the people within their society?
I am not a fan of fucking drip down economic shit. You know what I mean?
Trickle down.
No, I'm not a fan of any form of the water moving from one side to the other as far as economics go. But I'm not. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's. But what I'm saying is that'll be the argument. Now, the argument that will be met to that piece of information you've just gave is, but that's because there's more rich people in the UK.
Yeah, and my argument would be, great, let's make sure that people aren't dying of poverty, make sure that we don't need food banks for children, etc.
Let's make less rich people in the UK. I've heard
well, let's just bring everybody's standard of living up.
Right, sorry, I thought we were eating the rich here. That's where you were going at.
So the next claim is that pay in recent years has fallen faster than in all but 3 EU countries. So when we look at the data that's available for the development of real wages in European EU member states in 2019, so this is comparing 2018 to 2019 to see what our current level of improvement on real wages is, and we can see that the UK is sitting at 1.1% improvement in development of real wages.
There is about 15 countries above us, or thereabouts, as with regards to development. Now, also, this, as I understand it, when I was reading through the information when we were collating all this actually, even though it is interesting, it's kind of false, because this is raw data rather than data that's then adjusted for inflation, so it's actually slightly less good than the numbers are showing.
Right.
Because it's not adjusted for inflation. So
we did quite a bit of digging into real wages, and there wasn't a lot of current information available. The problem is much the same as what I was saying again, because you need to take, like, say, 40 countries when you're collecting all this, but then on top of that you then have to take into account worldwide inflation, and then inflation in the individual countries, any economic disparities that have happened in those countries at the time. Yeah, and there also appears to be a bit of a reticence from the UK to provide a lot of this information at the moment as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, in the nicest possible way, the last 9 years we've been under Tory government, right? So you're collecting that information straight off the back, which becomes very difficult, and you have to go through hoops to be able to collect the correct information that's not being given out to the public to have the raw data. But like I said, on top of that, once you then start adding in every other country that's involved, some of them are under left-wing government, some of them are under right-wing government, some in the middle of political turmoil or whatever. Once you collect all of that, and then you take into account things like I said, inflation, worldwide inflation, and internal inflation in the countries and stuff like that, these become very difficult to calculate every year, like, in real time. But yeah, essentially there's about 15 countries that are doing better than us.
And there's some countries doing a lot worse than us, like France, according to this graph, has went backwards by 1.3%. Italy stayed dead the same as it was the previous year. The Netherlands has increased by 0.2%, Malta's 0.6%, Belgium's 0.7%, as is Austria, Spain's 0.9%. The EU 28 in general is 1%, and then Portugal, Luxembourg and the UK are all at 1.1%, so slightly above average. But you've then got basically Denmark, Sweden, Cyprus, Germany, Finland, Ireland, Czech Republic, all above us, as are as are pretty much the ones, so the ones you would expect. So you've got Estonia, Hungary. I mean, not the ones you would expect, but the ones that have got, the ones that you would expect have got the most potential to grow. So Croatia, Slovenia, Hungary, Latvia, Estonia, Slovakia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Poland, Romania. You'll notice a theme with what the countries are there and where they do sit in Europe. They had the largest potential to be able to take
small wage and make small wages become bigger wages. Like, I mean, if we use, because we're in the UK and we're talking about it, if we use the trope of Polish workers coming over here and stuff like that because the wages were better and stuff, that means because the wages were perceived as not being particularly good in Poland, they have the most chance to be able to grow and become better wages. So we expect to see those countries, providing all the countries are doing well, we expect to see those countries at the top end, because we expect to see their wealth and their growth happening at a greater scale than us. But you would also point out that that's exactly the other thing that you don't have here. You don't see a base point. So like when we're saying something like France has dropped by 1.3, that's bad. But at the same time, if France were 40% above the UK already start away, that drop by 1.3 doesn't matter.
Yeah, it still leaves them above us in terms of real wages.
Yeah, so we don't have, and you don't always have all that data available to you. So, but essentially what we're saying is we're still not doing particularly great there on that scale.
The next claim in the article was that...
What's the next claim, Jerry?
Good question. The next claim was about working hours. Yeah, and we have some good data on working hours.
Well, I believe, right, 9 till 5.
It's the way to make a living.
What a way to
I
make
heard
a
that
living.
myself.
Yeah. See, in the morning, sometimes I like to stumble out of bed, right?
Make your way into the kitchen.
And then I pour myself a pot of ambition, which I call coffee.
Oh, right, okay, it's just your name for coffee.
And heroin. Coffee and heroin mix. It gives me ambition. The ambition is for more heroin, not going to lie. It's really my drive at that point. But that was a bit. I'm not really a heroin addict.
He is. So
I hide it well. Under my beard.
So the claim in the article at the time in 2014 was that the UK had the third longest working hours in Europe, and if we look at the data that we have now available to us, which was from 2016, we can see that that is still exactly the case. In terms of European countries, Iceland and Switzerland both have slightly longer working hours than us, although I think it's hard to tell by the scale of it. Switzerland might be exactly the same as the UK, but every other EU member has less working hours than us. The EU average is 40.3.
I bet there's people in the UK that are working in Iceland that have got longer working hours.
Well, yeah, that's true. Iceland, the shop, or the country?
Iceland, the shop.
So yeah, that claim looks to be roughly the same as it was at the time. The second...
There's no tons in it. I would like to, there's no tons in it.
No, there's not.
So it's not like we're saying everybody in the UK is working 10 hours more than everybody else in Europe. I just want you know what I mean? I don't want to be selling the idea that it's super bad.
But the Denmark, Italy, Netherlands...
The Denmark?
Italy, Netherlands, France, Finland, Ireland, Belgium are all, kind of significantly below 40. They're sitting at around 37 hours on average there.
Hey, you're kind of standard, what used to be standard, 37 and a half hours.
Whereas we're up towards 42 and a half.
Yeah. We're probably doing about almost an extra, what once was nearly an extra day's work. We're doing about 6 hours work.
And in terms
extra.
of across the entire year, it all adds up to us having a much poorer work-life balance than a lot of the other European countries.
Well, I mean, you're talking about 240, you're talking about 240 and then 50. You're talking about nearly 300 hours a week. So you're talking about you're talking about 10 days. Is that right?
That's weekly hours.
That's what I'm saying. So if that's weekly hours, and we're saying that it's about 6, so and then in a month you're then saying...
Oh, difference.
Yes, from 37 and a half, you know what I mean, to
Yeah.
the bottom. So you're then saying if it's 6, 12, 24, so you're saying 24 in a month, so that's 240, so and then it's nearly 300 in a year.
Yeah.
So and then if it's nearly 300 a year, that's essentially 10 days extra that you're working in a year. So that's, well, I mean, it's better than that, but you know what I mean?
It's weeks more.
Well, it's that's. I mean, so it's nearly.
If we're saying it's 42 and a half weeks is the weekly hours on average for the UK, and we're doing 300.
So it's 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks more.
No, it's not. It's 42 and a half into 300, Paul. It's nearly 6 weeks more work across a year.
All right. You're right.
If your maths was right for the other bit.
I'm just saying, because if it's 6 hours, because that's 42 hours, isn't it? That's 42, 43
About
hours.
42 and a half.
And that's 37, 36 or something like that. So I was just saying it as 6 hours. So if it's 6 hours every week.
6 times 52.
Aye. That's why I was doing it as 12 times 24. Because that's easier than 6 times 52. Because I'm no... But it's 312, isn't it?
No. Yeah, no, you're probably a bit right. Yeah, because 6 times 100 would be 600. It's about half in it. So yeah, it's just over 300.
312.
Yeah.
So which is...
So you're over 6 weeks more work across a year than someone in Denmark. That seems fucking mental.
No, you know, 320 hours, 24 hours and a
Yeah, but
day.
we're saying that. But we're saying that weekly. I'm talking about as an average week. So if our average week is 42 and a half, we're doing 300 and odd more hours a year.
In a year.
So we are doing more than 6 average working weeks more than.
Oh yeah,
a Danish
sorry,
person.
more than them. Yeah, sorry, I'm just. Aye, right, cool.
Yeah, we good on
We're
that.
good. I think I'll give it that. But I mean, the long and short of it is you're working an extra month, just over, but you're working an extra month anyway.
So the next claim we're looking at then is that we have Europe's third highest housing costs, according to the article. So what did we actually find when we looked at that now? Cost of housing. So this is split up across the EU by square footage. That's Paul just rolling back to the mic.
Square footage. That's who I use to build my websites.
It's actually square meters, sorry, right?
Aye, that's who I use to build my website.
So previously, we were sitting as the third highest in Europe for housing costs. We've now managed to increase past that to being the second highest for cost of housing in Europe.
We're doing worse.
We're doing worse.
Yes!
And we're second only to Monaco.
Fucking ruin you every day apart from Monaco, who, by the way, every single house in Monaco is like £1 million.
Yeah, so per square metre of property in Monaco, it's 44,500 euros per square metre.
Per square metre? Holy shit.
But in the UK, it's 21,179 euros per square metre.
It's 50 grand a square metre nearly in Monaco, Jerry.
Whereas somewhere like Moldova's 965 euro a square metre. Belgium's only 3,000. Austria's like 11,500. Germany's only 5,900. Like, I mean, think of...
What, we're 4 times more expensive than Germany per square metre?
Yeah, give or take, yeah.
That's probably why Mike moved to Germany.
Spain's less than 5,000. Switzerland even is only 11,500.
So half of us.
Holland's 6,900. France is quite high. It's up nearly 13,000. But yeah.
I mean, you say it's quite high, but it's still like 7,000 less than us.
Yeah. So we are incredibly expensive
What's
for
the cheapest?
property. What the cheapest was Moldova at 965. I don't think there's any cheaper than that
So,
within the...
As the other offshoot of our podcast, a podcast within a podcast, it's not another fake newscast. Property Watch, buy property in Moldova.
I don't know, like...
Don't know if you want your name attached to that, no?
I'm going to remove myself from that piece of financial advice. And remember, we are not qualified financial advisors.
No. Remember, we're not qualified.
I mean, I'm qualified in some things, but none of them will be useful to you.
I mean, I'm qualified in things as well, but nothing is ever going to come upon this.
So the next claim in the article then was around
Train ticket prices.
train fares, yes, and whether or not we were the highest in Europe for that. So Paul done a good bit of digging into this.
Adam, I'm upset. I'm not going to lie to you. So, what I will say is, this is a very grey area across the board. Now, for example, you can look at the distance from Luton to St Pancras, for example, is 35 mile. Mm-hmm. And that train ticket for your monthly train ticket will cost you like 500 quid.
Seems quite dear.
It's not quite 500 quid, but essentially it's 470, 480, you know what I mean? 500 quid, right? Now, you will then get people using comparisons and they will say the same distance in France will cost you £61. Right. But is that the same distance in France travelling across Paris? Right, because you're essentially talking about not just the busiest city in the UK, but one of the busiest cities in Europe, and arguably even one of the busiest cities in the world, right?
And one of the most expensive
One
places.
of the most expensive, exactly, both to be and to live, and you know what I mean? So I don't believe that, and a lot of the times when there's a lot of articles, there's an article from the Metro, for example, that does exactly this, and it breaks it down. It's like, but it only costs you this amount of money to travel across in Germany from one location to another, whereas it costs you this to travel in the UK. Right, it does, but in the UK, if you're travelling through even Manchester, you're travelling through a major area of commerce, rather than talking about Germany that's like 4 times the size of the UK, and you're travelling across 30 miles of nothing in the nicest possible way. Like, as in the same travelling distance from, let's say, like Lanark up from where we are to Glasgow doesn't cost you £500 a month for 35 mile. You know what I mean? It's about 30 mile for that travelling distance.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason it doesn't is because you're travelling through some small towns until you get to the big city. Like,
I think as well, one of the biggest problems with these stats are that they look at the maximum rail fares.
yes, they do. And this is another problem that comes up. So one of the issues that you have is if you book, so for example, if you book a month in advance, I'm just actually getting the actual number up. So if you were to book a month in advance from London to Sheffield, don't know what sequence of events has played out in your life that you're in London and you're going to Sheffield. But anyway, I used to do a
Want
lot.
to see some deprivation?
Do you know what? I feel there's poor here, but they're not acting poor. Where can I go?
They're not speaking like poor people I've seen on the telly.
They're not speaking like.
I want a Yorkshire accent on my poor person.
They're not speaking like they've got cotton wool and warm ale in their mouth at the same time. Anyway, sorry, that's not fair, but I've done a lot of work in Sheffield, so I'm just saying. But London to Sheffield, a month.
I think we were more taking the piss out of the cunts who wanted to go and see
that's
the
what we're
poor
doing.
people.
That's what we're doing. It's not like when I used to, going to Sheffield to see some poor folk. And I'm from North Lanarkshire, but not on the list. Just saying.
London to Sheffield.
Yeah, so London to Sheffield, a month in advance will cost you £22.
Whereas Paris to Dijon,
It will cost you £32.
Rome to Florence is £20,
Yeah.
and Nuremberg to Kassel is £27.71. So in that context,
We're
it's
pretty much, well, I mean, yeah,
competitive.
We're competitive. We're cheap. Now, the thing is, as well, I've not actually checked. I will imagine that each of them are roughly the same distance. Rome to Florence, I would imagine, is about the same distance from London to Sheffield, because I know Italy relatively well for travelling. Paris to Dijon seems about right.
Yeah.
The old mustard run.
and I think that they've chosen
You know, like,
the old mustard.
that's what they used to call it.
They've clearly chosen these for a reason.
Because,
so
it's roughly the same distance. Now, if you were to book them the same day,
yeah.
London to Sheffield is now £79.
It went up to 79, yeah.
Paris to Dijon is still £32.43.
So it's made no difference whatsoever.
None at all. Rome to Florence is £46.33.
So it's more than doubled, but only just more than doubled.
Yeah. And Nuremberg to Castle is £73.21. So it's essentially... So
It's went up almost as much.
exact same, almost, give or take, 50 quid, essentially. I mean, it's we're splitting hairs here, but essentially it's 50 quid for both in the UK and in Germany.
Although theirs is still cheaper. The German one is still about £6 cheaper.
Yeah, about, but in the grand scheme of things, I mean, see, once you're dropping 73 quid on your train ticket here, but the day ticket, like, be it £5 or be it not, I mean, like, it's still a lot of money for your ticket. There's a lot of growth on the ticket, you know what I mean? So it's about £50 in both cases. As I said, Rome to Florence in that case is essentially doubled its price. Whether or not that is translatable across the board, where it always doubles in price, and it would be interesting to find out. In Paris to Dijon, it seems to be a flat rate. Now, another thing that came up when you're investigating this is that in the UK, for me to get a return ticket somewhere, it is almost never double the price of a single. I mean, unless you choose some if you're going to some...
It means that you pay the bulk of the cost for a single ticket And then if you want to do the return journey, you're maybe paying a tenner extra or something.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas in most of the countries in Europe, when you pay a ticket, you pay a ticket as a ticket price. So, for example, your Paris to Dijon journey, it'll be £32.43 one way and it'll be £32.43 back.
Yeah.
Whereas your London to Sheffield, your £79 that it's cost you on the day will be £79. But if that was a return, it'd cost like £100.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and then in these points, then it's.
But why are you punishing people who don't want to go back to where they came
London from Sheffield?
I just want to go somewhere and never go back. Imagine you spent your entire life though never having a return journey.
But sounds like the name. It sounds like a book, doesn't it? Like Hobbit.
Imagine you spent your whole life never making a return journey.
The Hobbit, never a return journey. Like, you just travelling a bit. Anyway. It's because most people fucking. It's because most people commute.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
So the thing is, so you would argue then that you would actually argue that they probably want to change it.
So if you were going to go London to Sheffield, Sheffield to London, Paris to Dijon, Dijon to Paris, that actually might equalise a bit. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah. So maybe not Paris to Dijon because of the pricing there, but certainly the Rome to Florence. Rome to Florence would be traditional, like looking at the way that they break down, but I can't say definitely on this day with these numbers and stuff like that, but going to the idea that the way it works, if you were to book it on the day and you were to book a return, you'd be looking at about £90 essentially from Rome to Florence, whereas London to Sheffield you'd be looking at £100-110 because the return is cheaper, usually substantially cheaper, but you can't always guarantee that. It depends on the line and stuff like that you're going, and times as well. That's the other thing that's not taken into account when they do a lot of these numbers.
I do notice though that they haven't chosen the Netherlands in order to demonstrate this, a place which has highly subsidised rail fares and is vastly cheaper and has a vastly superior service to the UK.
They also do own quite a high percentage of the UK train lines as well, so that's possibly the reason they've not done it, like on both sides, because saying look, it's dead cheap and also it's dead expensive for you to use their fucking trains, like I get why we this article in question, the one that we're using for some of this, comes from the BBC. Take from that what you wish. But yeah, so like I said, with the metro and stuff like that, if you look at their articles, they are much more in line with the idea it's incredibly expensive, but they don't take.
This has also came from the TUC, who are potentially have a vested interest in saying, well, no, we're actually offering decent value for money, because they don't want to see people stopping using trains in the UK, do they? They're looking after their contingent, which is people who work on the railways. Well,
absolutely. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, like, they're like, something that if you actually look from if you look through all the articles that come about, especially the train lines, they pretty much all come from TUC, or they come from components of like Momentum and stuff like that, who are always the people who are being interviewed and always the people who are there talking about it. Now, that could be because in some cases you want to sell a picture for why you want it to be nationalised, and other places are like you want to make sure that people are still using the trains. But the point being, like, very rarely is it just like an independent review on the train prices. It always comes from the background of one of these sources in a lot of cases, and that makes it then. It can be a splash piece on why you should be, or why it should be nationalised, you know what I mean? Now, but like I said, a lot of other things that never get shown when they're doing this is the times. So yes, a train journey that's 35 mile can cost £61 in France, but are you checking your train journey at rush hour in the UK as opposed to at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in France? You know what I mean?
And essentially the verdict of this piece was that the UK has some of the most expensive tickets in Europe if bought on the day of travel, but some of the cheapest tickets if bought far enough in advance. And that's the way our model works.
Yeah, and that's the way our model works. Now, you would argue that if you're a tourist, you don't know that. Fuck tourists, no, but if you know, but you know what I mean, like, so, or if you are a student, or especially if you're in business, so you've been told you have to go down to London tomorrow, you don't have the luxury of ordering a ticket a month ago. There was regularly, and I mean, I actually know from both business that I've done and you've done, there has been times where you're told tomorrow you have to be in a place, and that place could be in a different country.
But that means that usually the company's paying for it, and those are considered tax deductible expenses.
No, I get why it then works out okay in the grand scheme. I mean, I'm not going to lie, you usually get travelling expenses that mean you make money after back, but
Paul,
but like
that's immoral.
Paul is immoral. That's what they call me. But yeah, but what I mean is it's still arguably, it doesn't matter who you're preying on, is arguably still a predatory tactic that if people have to order tomorrow, it's going to cost them substantially more, do you know what I mean, for a ticket that if they didn't buy, you would just have a space on your train.
But hey, a man's gotta eat.
Aye, but all these lads are eating.
All right. They're from eating.
All these lads, aye, that I know.
So what was the next claim in the article then? We are now looking at
various tabs that have got nothing to do with what it is that we're talking about, but it's just it's a good time. It's a good time looking at tabs.
Found it.
There we go.
So the next one that we were looking at was we were looking at. Okay, we've done housing costs, we've done highest train fares, the second worst levels of fuel poverty. So if we're going to have a look at fuel poverty.
Now, is fuel well, what's your thoughts on that, Jerry?
What you just said?
Is fuel poverty the costing of fuel for us? Is it the amount of fuel that we have in the UK? Is it the fuel production that we have in the UK? What is fuel poverty? Define.
Fuel poverty is basically people who are priced out of being able to afford to heat their home. I did actually find an exact data set in terms of the basically there was a definition, and it was actually a definition which came from the UK, which has been widely applied across Europe. I'll find,
because we know all about fuel poverty. We thought we better give it a name.
We invented it. Yeah. The definition is, well, okay, right. So I said that there was one definition. There's a couple, right? It was statistically, it used to be defined as a household needing to spend more than 10% of its income to maintain an adequate heating regime. However, definitions of income...
Adequate heating regime is quality. It sounds like there's some kind of fucking thermostat dictator.
And it says, in the UK, fuel poverty is defined by the Warm Homes and Energy Conservation Act as, quote, a person is to be regarded as living in fuel poverty if he is a member of a household, only a he apparently, living on a lower income in a home which cannot be kept warm at a reasonable cost. And then it says statistically that used to be defined as what I just said. However, definitions of income and adequate heating regime vary between UK government and devolved administrations, so Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. A new, more complex definition of fuel poverty is now used in the UK based on the Hills Review. This gave the following definition. Fuel poverty is now defined as when a household's required fuel costs are above the median level, and if they were to spend what is required, then the household would be left with a residual income below the official poverty line. Additionally, a fuel poverty indicator has been created, which shows how far into fuel poverty households are, not simply if they are in poverty or not. So
that's what I was going to call my next album.
It's real interesting. But essentially,
it's all about how much money you're spending on having a warm house.
Yeah,
being able to cook your dinner,
and what that relates to as a percentage of your total household income.
I mean, I don't know when they came up with the original definition, but the idea that it only costing 10% is 10%. That's not that much in the grand scheme of things.
Of your monthly income, I mean, you...
For all your electricity, all your gas, like...
But that's not what it's saying though, is it? It's saying for keeping your house warm. Now, your electricity and gas are used for other things, cooking, TVs, heating up a kettle, etc. It's only talking about the heating of your home.
I know, but then... it might be... But then that's a poor definition.
Like, you don't need internet to keep your house warm, but you do need electricity for that.
Aye, but you definitely need to be able to eat. No, you know, to keep your house warm, but to no die.
I bet this is fuel poverty, not poverty.
Aye, but it's the fuel. Like, if you don't have enough money to heat your house, you don't have enough money to run your fucking gas stove.
Yeah, well, I would say if you're in,
And if you have to make a choice between one of the two.
this is how it works. If you're in poverty, outright poverty, then you are most likely in fuel poverty. However, you might be in fuel poverty without being in poverty.
I know, but what I'm saying is where is there a line that says I've got enough money to cook my dinner on the gas, but not enough to run my boiler?
Well, there isn't.
That's right. So if that fuel poverty is one and the same, like heating your house and being able to cook your food is the same fuel poverty, isn't it?
No, but they're saying it's all about the percentage of your income.
I know.
Like, you might be able to comfortably heat your home and eat, but it might be preventing you from doing lots of other things.
I get that, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is even though it says in the definition heat your home, it surely means heat your home and be able to use the necessities to survive, like have your fridge running and have your cooker working to be able to cook the food that you're eating. You know what I mean? Because that's fuel poverty as well. Like it doesn't matter if you've got enough money to heat your home if you then don't have the extra money required to be able to run your gas hob or have a fridge on.
But that's why it's about whether it can be kept warm at a reasonable cost. And it used to be defined as a household needing to spend more than 10% of its income to maintain an adequate heating regime. So if it was less than 10%, that was considered to be acceptable. They've said that it's now a bit more complex, so that if the required fuel costs are above the median level, and if they were to spend what is required on heating, then the household would be left with a residual income, so that's whatever else is left, which it puts them below the poverty line. So if after heating their home they then can't afford enough for food, etc., then they're considered in fuel poverty. They're also in poverty.
poverty. They're just poor at that point.
Yeah. So, given that that's the case, the article originally stated that we had Europe's second worst levels of fuel poverty. The latest stats that we have for 2016, which was from Eurostat.
We're number one. No.
No.
Damn.
So there are many more countries in the EU, essentially, who can't afford to keep their home adequately warm. As a percentage of population, Bulgaria, Lithuania, Greece, Cyprus, Portugal, Italy, Romania, Serbia, Latvia, Spain, Croatia, Hungary, the EU average, Poland and Malta are all worse than us.
Are they? There's
Yeah.
a lot of warm countries there.
I know, but they're warm in the summer. A lot of those countries will be
I know.
equally as cold in the winter.
I'm aware. I'm just like, like when you were reading out like from knowing the countries that are in Europe, like in the EU, there's a lot of countries that I imagine it's a fucking nightmare to keep your home warm.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I know that when my sister lived in Malta, it was freezing in their house in the winter because they didn't really have an adequate central heating system.
Because you didn't need it during the summer. I mean, I suppose they all suffer from, like, there's a large parts of Spain that I've been in that suffer from the same as, like, the way I was going to summarise this sounds mental, but it's like the same basic principle as any desert. Do you know what I mean? Like, essentially, there's no clouds, there's open skies, they're in the middle of the fucking land where there's no
they
sea
don't
or
live in a
anything like that.
biodome.
But what I mean is like it's cold as shit because it's cold as shit at night, and then through the winter where you're not getting the added awesomeness of warm sun throughout the day to like heat up the bricks in your house and heat up the ground. It's just cold. But like I said, I just didn't expect quite as many warm countries there when there's lots of countries that are on that list that are cold as shit all the time.
But I mean, it does seem to suggest that we're quite far from being the second worst country in Europe.
We're miles away.
However, given that we are the fifth biggest economy in the world, as we're often told, you would expect us to have no people who can't afford to heat their home. And
I find it shocking that Spain and Italy are on that side of us.
I know. Well, it is kind of surprising, but Ireland are doing better than us on it. We're at 6.1% of our population. Ireland are at 5.8%. Just to give you an idea, Bulgaria are at 39.2% of the population who can't afford to keep their home adequately warm. Lithuania are nearly 30%, as are Greece.
So Lithuania and Greece are essentially a third of their country.
Yeah, and then there's quite a drop off from like Cyprus to Latvia. You're then down below 10% for Croatia, Hungary. The EU average is 8.7%. Poland and Malta are 7.1% and 6.8% respectively. But then you've got Ireland, Slovakia, France, Belgium, Slovenia, the Czech Republic, Germany, Denmark, Estonia, Austria, Netherlands, Sweden, Luxembourg, Finland, Norway and Switzerland are all doing far better than us. Norway, less than 1% of people can't afford to keep their home adequately warm, and Switzerland at 0.6%.
So do you think, this is just spitball here, right, without any research, do you think that if you actually look at the countries who all are much lower than us, they're actually, in a lot of cases, cold as shit countries?
Yeah, they're much colder than us on average across the year, yeah.
So do you think it might just be there has been better investment, constant investment and work on being able to have more efficient, more fuel efficient houses, more energy efficient houses and more fuel efficient processes for doing it just because of necessity?
But investment by whom?
Well, the government.
Well, okay, so there you go. So it's the government have invested in that.
I'm not saying it shouldn't have happened, but I'm saying, do you think that that's probably the reason, because there is a higher requirement? I mean, essentially what I'm saying is, see if you take like Norway, for example, at the top end of the awesome scale there, like,
yeah,
if you didn't have viable working like heating in Norway, you'd be dead in the winter. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, for a lot of it, it's so cold. So and then you have to. So and then the houses are built in such a way.
You also have a tradition of public investment, you know, and state investment in public services and public life, which we don't have here.
I'll choose one of the former USSR states or something that was there
like
on the list.
Estonia.
Like where you maybe do but don't have that. But my point is, you have to.
USSR, one thing that they definitely did have was a history of public involvement.
State nationalisation. They were big on it. But what I mean is like, is it like going on the idea that if you actually like look through the countries that you read out from left to right, essentially countries that are traditionally warmer and more pleasant in the summer and stuff like that
have a bigger problem with heating
than the other side. If you look at that scale,
that's largely true, I would say. Yeah, looking at that, yeah, for the most part. But then when you look at the countries kind of closest to us, both geographically and in climate, so that would be, for me, Ireland, Belgium, France, Germany, Holland,
or components of most of those countries.
Yeah,
I mean, like I said,
they
France
are all outperforming us.
What I will say is, France and Germany actually are a difficult one, because the sheer size and geographical area that they take up means that it's not quite as black and white as that with them, because they take up such a large expanse of earth. Like their means and averages and stuff like that for things like temperature and stuff like that are very, very different. Like
varied, but Paul,
not so much Germany, but France, like for example.
But we're a long, thin country, so actually the latitudes have a massive bearing on average temperatures from the very north of the UK to the very south of it.
Oh, they do, but I mean, that's why it would be interesting to then see a breakdown of the standalone UK to see if you have such a problem, and if you have such a large problem in Scotland as you do, say, the south of England, which is warmer than, you know what I mean, the north of Scotland. Because if we look at that graph and if we look at the information that's available, is the colder you are, the better you are at keeping you built your house to stay warm. You know what I mean? Like, as in, I would imagine, and I can't be sure of it, but like I said, just spitballing without any research, that houses built in the north of Scotland are probably better at retaining heat than houses built in Cornwall.
Potentially, but also I know for a fact that there have been more government-led policies in Scotland over the past 10 years around insulation and heating of homes and stuff like that than there has been down south.
We covered renewable energy already, didn't we? We spoke about that yet?
Yeah, we spoke about it.
So when we were doing that, so one of the things that came up because like I said, I didn't want to talk about the carbon emission stuff as much. One of the things that came up was the targets for us to meet the 2050 neutral carbon zero goal that we have in the UK.
Scotland's is 2040 though, I believe. Right?
Yeah, but the UK wide one at 2050. There is stuff like we were meant to be insulating something like 90,000 walls a year.
Yeah.
And in 2018 we done 16,000. That's less. We were meant to be doing, using benchmarks from the EU, we're meant to be doing 545,000 loft installations.
Right.
And we done like 43,000.
That's also less.
Much less. So if we look at investment, there's quite clearly an issue there with investment anyway, and those things will help keep the house. I mean, I know carbon, but let's ignore the carbon factor of that, and just that in the event you insulated lofts and you felt walls with insulation, the houses would be warmer, and as such it would cost less to keep the houses warm.
I know noticeably in our local area along the Ribera Road there, they have, that's what all the council houses, you know, all the scaffolding and stuff that's been on there.
I know the company that was doing all the work.
But that's what they've been doing.
They were a customer.
Outside cladding on all of the council houses to make sure that they were properly insulated.
Indeed.
Anyway, so
actually, see, I made a face there as if I was got like work-based stuff, but I was actually then like cladding chat and that kind of stuff, and I just like, because I was going to go off on one, because then there's all this stuff that's recently happened, and like there's been chat with Grenfell Towers, been some chat with Stormzy, and then I wanted to go off on a bit of a rant about the stuff that happened recently with that, but obviously we're not doing that in this episode.
Well, we can just keep it to the end of this episode, right?
And then we'll just go on a rant, because it's just that the Stormzy stuff came up recently, and obviously he's a big proponent of justice for the Grenfell Tower people and
this
stuff.
This is not keeping it to the end, Paul.
No, but I'm just saying so, and then just there where it was like, because you say cladding, I was just that way, but it's like, and by the way, we're at this, I have to mention something on recording about this, you know what I mean? Anyway, next.
So the next thing that the article threw up was,
honestly, two mouthfuls of Buckfast.
Oh, it was about the happiest children in the developed world, right? So
Buckfast. Fact.
So the claim in the article was that Britain has the least happy children in the developed world. Right?
Oh, I don't believe that.
Well, it turns out you might have been correct at the time, but certainly judging by some of the articles I've looked at, we are, according to UNICEF anyway, we're doing better than we were, to the extent that we are rated 16th in the world in terms of happy children.
I mean, that's still garbage though. 16th, we're the 5th richest economy, but there's 15 countries above us that are happier than us for our kids.
So UNICEF,
is that really who number one is?
The Holland, the Netherlands, yeah.
Kind of about like stoned and all that.
No, nothing like sweeping generalised stereotypes. Yeah, so basically the UNICEF report, it was looking at state of childhood, children's education equality, children's health and welfare, and yeah, that's sort of how they're rating happiness. So yeah, according to the rankings,
how many jetties the kids can stand out on while fishing
and fish with a net. Norway,
who's a net?
It's Isma. Norway was second, Iceland third. It's amazing how these Scandinavian countries are always so high up.
In all fairness, right, they've got pictures for all of them, right? And the Iceland picture, they're straight up like a fucking... Is that the Iceland picture? Mm-hmm. Oh, damn it, I thought it was an Iceland. I was going to say, like, there's a kid, like...
Oh, no, actually, no.
Right, so there's a kid, like, on a sleigh getting pulled by a reindeer through, like, snow. It's like, I'd be fucking overjoyed. Like, dashing through the snow.
Iceland, who's...
Who got rid of the bankers.
Well, and countrywoman Birgie Johnsdottir was recently featured on the show.
Oh, friend.
Finland, number 4. Sweden, number 5. Germany, number 6.
Notice a theme.
Yeah. Luxembourg, number 7. 8th was Switzerland. 9th was Belgium. 10th was Ireland. Good old Ireland. 11 was Denmark. 12 Slovenia. So Slovenian children are happier than British children. Take from that what you will.
Most of these places it snows. I'm just saying.
Paul, that's a really weird observation.
But most of these places, it's like quite snowy a lot of the time. Switzerland, Slovenia, Norway.
You think that's
Finland,
why they're happy? I don't
Denmark.
think it does snow a lot in Slovenia, Paul. Slovenia's like next to Croatia and Italy and shit.
Aye.
But it doesn't snow anywhere near as much as Iceland or Finland
I
or
never see it as
Norway
much
or
as,
Sweden.
but it snows more than it snows here. In the winter, I'm pretty certain it does. I'll check that later.
Yeah, you will. France, the Czech Republic, is in 14th. Portugal is in 15th. And we all know what happens to kids there, especially if their name McCann.
You know, I was going to say that. And I thought, oh, that's brutal.
16th is the United Kingdom. So we're not doing terribly. We should definitely be doing a lot better. But
We're beating Canada. Oh.
in terms of the claim that we had the least happy children in the developed world, that might have been the case in the past, but we seem to have improved somewhat upon that.
Well, now you can be happy knowing that Canadian children are less happy than our children.
I mean, that does kind of make me happy.
Who else is on the list?
Who's like
Below
who
us.
makes up the rest of the top 20?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're at 16.
17th is
was,
Canada, 18th is Austria, 19th is Spain, and 26th
which, by the way,
is not
the
after
number.
19 is the United States. I'm guessing this was an article written in the US, and that's why they highlighted that.
I mean, I will also say, because you've just brought that up, that it does look like this article is from a website called mom.com.
Mom.com.
Yeah, so I'm
That's
not...
mom to rhyme with com.
I'm not questioning their journalistic integrity.
Well, it's from a UNICEF report, which there's a link to, so
Cool.
it's
We'll check the report then. Just
provable.
because mom.com.
Mom.com's one of my favourites, actually.
What, mom.com?
Mom.com. So, yeah, the next claim.
Recommended. Prince Charlotte and
Prince George made their
make-
Sandringham debut. Go fuck yourselves.
It's recommended for you, Jerry, because of your search history.
Fucking isn't he? So maybe Michelle's. So the next one was about infant mortality, and it was claimed that we had
about this.
the highest infant mortality rate in Western Europe. So the article I looked at for infant mortality rate in 2017, the stats.
Did I get nothing here? You just better read out these stats and get rid of this, because this is a tough one.
So it's death rates per 1,000. It was birth and death rates, and then it was infant mortality rate per 1,000 live births. So we have many countries basically which are doing better than us in Europe. We have 3.9 as our rate of infant mortality per 1,000. So Sweden 2.4. Basically, I'll read out all the ones which are doing better than us first. So Sweden, Spain, Slovenia, all doing better than us. Portugal, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Lithuania are doing better than us. Italy, Ireland, Hungary, Greece, Germany, Finland, Estonia, Denmark, Czech Republic, Cyprus, remarkably better than us at 1.3. Belgium, doing better than us, and Austria. The reason I'm reading it like this is because it's not in any particular order. So at 3.9, France are exactly the same as us, which is a fair comparison because of the demographics and everything else. So we're kind of on a par with them. Obviously, I've told you Germany are doing better. The ones who are doing worse than us.
Spanish children aren't even happier than the children in the UK. And
they're not happier, but they're more alive.
no, they're less alive.
No.
Are they doing better than us?
Yeah, 2.7.
They're not even happy about it.
They should be. Someone should tell them.
What about the Portuguese?
Portuguese are worse than us. No, Portuguese are better than us too. Apart from one in particular. Maybe.
Wasn't born there.
So Bulgaria are doing worse than us. Croatia are doing slightly worse than us. France are the same.
I'm finding it hard to find something funny here. I'm not going to lie to you. Like we're talking about kid deaths.
Latvia are doing worse than us. Malta are doing much worse than us. Poland doing slightly worse than us. Romania doing worse than us.
Is that because Maltese houses are really cold in the winter?
Maybe. But that's it. So, like, those are the countries who are...
There was literally 5 countries or something there, like, no many.
Yeah. So, but we're not, certainly, as claimed in the article, we don't have the highest infant mortality in Western Europe. In Western Europe, actually, we do have
In Western Europe,
the joint highest alongside
France.
France. Yeah.
Next thing,
Child poverty was the next.
yeah. So in the
No,
article,
we didn't get anything. It
child
stated
poverty.
that childcare costs are much higher than most European countries.
you're fucking right, it is. In fact, in my research, it looks like childcare costs round about 2018 again for the data. We were the highest in Europe. We were essentially actually the second highest in the OECD, like the developed world, if you will. You know what I mean? Pretty
Only
much.
New Zealand was more expensive
Aye.
than us.
I mean, like, and we're like, when I say we're the highest by quite a considerable way. To give you an idea, when you break down the numbers, essentially only 4 countries in the OECD stand above 30% of the combined mother and father's wage to be paying for childcare. That would be New Zealand, the UK, Australia and the United States. The average across the OECD countries is 14.6%, 14.4%, somewhere in that region. So we in the UK are paying around just over 30%. So we're actually paying more than...
over 35, Paul.
Is it more than 35? I thought it was less than 30, so it was just over. Anyway. My point,
Over 35.
okay, but my point being that it's more than double the average for OECD countries.
Yeah, mental.
Now, if you take into account, then one of the things that I find very interesting about that is if you look at something like the countries that come up all the time when we talk about, especially from our point of view, when you talk about things like Scottish independence, people talk about the cost of living being so much higher in Scandinavian countries and Northern European countries, and as such it's expected that both parents should work, whereas in the UK in lots of cases only one parent works. I know that dynamic has changed dramatically over more current times, but you know, like generally speaking, as a rule in Scandinavia, in many cases both parents work. And they talk about then how your child has to go into childcare and how you spend lots of money on childcare. Well, you might spend lots of money on childcare, but you're only spending between 5 and essentially 10%, just over 10%, but between 5 and 10% for pretty much all Scandinavian countries fall under that scenario.
Well, like, yeah, I'd say Norway there on the graph looks like it's probably 7.5%,
yeah.
and that's the most. On Denmark, probably, yeah, about 7.5% also looks similar to Norway. You've got Sweden in there, which is just over 5%. Iceland is bang on 5%. You've got countries like the Czech Republic where it's like 2.5%. It's the lowest in the OECD.
I mean, my favourite of the 3 countries that don't have any either childcare, so either it costs nothing or your children are left. Your children are left outside Tesco with your dog. It's a dog eat child world. I told that
joke. Austria less than 5%, Italy, Cyprus, Germany about 5%, Iceland 5%, Sweden just over 5%, Estonia all around the 5% mark. Less than 10%, you've got Bulgaria, Norway, Croatia, Portugal, Spain, Greece, Hungary. You have just over 10% for Denmark. The EU average is about 11%. Israel about there as well. Slovenia, Belgium all in that ballpark. Under 15%, Belgium, Latvia, France, Lithuania. The OECD average is under 15%. Poland's under 15%. You then jump up with Luxembourg to over 15%, probably about 16, 17 there.
But that's the thing as well. Remember that when you do these things, like, I don't know if many people who are listening have ever been to Luxembourg. Luxembourg is like a mad wee principality thing that lives in the middle. Like, I imagine that across the board, like, Luxembourg almost falls under the same scenario.
Cost of living will be high.
Monaco and everything, do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's like everything will be higher there.
You've got over 20%, between 20 and 25 you have.
So we're clear, I'm not saying that Luxembourg is actually a principality. It just, for lots of criteria, I mean, if you were defining it now, I mean, it almost is a principality in pretty much every term because of the way it exists. Anyway, right back to the question.
That's all right. So between 20 and 25 you've got Holland, the Netherlands. That's one country, not two.
Between 20 and 25, you have Holland and the Netherlands.
Finland, Canada.
I suppose Finland probably falls under the Scandinavian territories, doesn't it?
Then yeah.
So
So that's an outlier in that respect. Between 25 and 30%, you have.
By the way, when I say I suppose, I mean it fucking does.
Definitely. Yeah. Slovak Republic, Slovakia, I imagine that is.
Slovak Republic.
Sorry for coughing in your ears, people. Japan, Switzerland, Ireland are all between 25 and 30%, and then above 30%, as we said, you've got Australia, United States, United Kingdom's above 35%, and so is New Zealand.
And just as a reference point, I am very clued up on the cost of living and stuff in Dublin, right?
Right.
Cost of living in Dublin for like purchasing a premises, for how much you get paid, all that type of stuff, is pretty much on par with London.
Yeah.
Right. But Dublin, but Ireland as a whole is about the size of London. I mean, I know it's not, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like, as in, if you take
population-wise.
Population-wise, and then
It's less than Greater London, actually. Greater London's about 8 million.
Aye.
And Ireland is about 5 to 5.5 million, similar size to Scotland.
Kind of what I was getting to there is because of that, like, when you're talking the disparity between the two of them, like, you would imagine that average is getting driven up by things like London. You know what I mean?
But then, in fairness, the average in Ireland's getting driven up by Dublin.
Dublin, no, but that's what I mean. So, and then for Dublin to still be so low, even though cost of living in Dublin is still so high for everything else. Like just saying, when we were talking about Finland and when we were talking about other things,
Ireland's still not coming out great on there. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th highest in the OECD for childcare costs.
I know, but the difference between Ireland...
Can't just leave them with nuns anymore though, because they're not to be trusted.
Just realised that this is a much more above board episode and I can't make the joke of it. But if you look at on the graph where Ireland is and then they jump up from the... Weirdly, I would also state, because that's when we were looking at the stuff earlier on, I was doing the research into this, I did point out to Jerry that 5 top countries
are all English speaking.
All English speaking countries. Now, I don't know if I don't know what you can draw from that, but essentially it is interesting to note that the highest cost of childcare in the world, well, in the OECD, in the world, I mean, essentially, like, there's not going to be other random places that are like less developed countries with higher cost of living. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you're right. Ireland, the top 5 are all English speaking, and then not far behind you've got Canada, which is at least partially English speaking. And
it's probably the French side that's bringing it down. bringing that cost down,
the average down.
Aye. So, but I mean, that's just that's just an interesting thing to see there. But essentially, we are in Europe. I mean, we're the worst. The difference between us and I think Ireland are the next from the European countries, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between us is what, 10%? Salary nearly.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're substantially the worst.
And on that happy note, let's have a look at how we're getting on with pensions.
By the way, it's not going to be grand.
It's not that. You sure? I think we might be doing really well.
How's taking care of your kids going? What about taking care of your elderly?
So, it's British elderly people who are the 4th poorest pensioners in the EU, was the claim made in the article we were looking at.
Number 4.
So, OECD countries, we've got a graph which shows both the statutory pension and then how it's pulled up by the occupational pension to sort of give an average of what people are getting in terms of the gross replacement rate is what it's called here. So the Netherlands is sitting at the highest rate overall on this OECD graph in terms of pensions, but the significant portion of that is the occupational pension section.
So essentially, on the graph, people see the graph when they go to the website, but on the graph, the orange variable is your private pension.
Correct.
And the blue is
your company provided pension.
Yeah. But what I mean is, but that's what I mean. Like your private pension, and that your pension that came from something that's not state. The blue is state pension.
Yeah, correct.
So consistently, in the Netherlands, your private or business, your work pension is, by the looks of things, fucking blinding, by the way. Just and then you still get a little top up of the Dutch government.
Now, if we look across the state provided measures in the OECD, we can see that Mexico are worse than the UK. Australia are worse than the UK.
By the way, see mixing up Monaco and Mexico.
It's a big mistake. Yeah. Australia provide no statutory pension. Chile are the same, so they're both worse than the UK. You also have Israel is very, very marginally worse than the UK. Iceland is much worse, and Denmark is worse than the UK by a couple of percent. Now, the UK, if you take the average state pension plus the average occupational pension, is still very middling in terms of
middling is being nice. They're essentially at the top end of the first third. You know what I mean?
There's 12 countries that fare worse than the UK when you look at state pension plus occupational pensions. It says here, Germany are just behind us, but the state provided pension in Germany is nearly twice as much as the one from the UK. And in terms of countries who provide more than us, you've got Holland, the Netherlands.
Who's that blinding one? So see, because I'm too far away from the graph. So see, when you're going up the graph, right, from us, then see, no, before you get up there, there's a blue just kind of middle of the road. Full blue, yeah.
That's France.
France are smashing it with their state provided pension.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, to me, like, the ones that are at the top end, do you know what I mean? So we ignore the last two because they are private pensions and they are totally variable, right?
Yeah, and they are mostly private pensions for both of them, which is Denmark and the Netherlands. Right?
And then the next three that are there
are purely state provided. And that's Luxembourg, Austria, and Italy. So that's the top five. I mean, and of the top five, the fifth, fourth, and third place are purely state provided, and they're not a million miles away from the first and second place.
No, I mean, certainly not from second place. First place seems to be bizarrely large as well, and I would say from knowing, and I mean, I know you've done various stuff out there as well, there's lots of...
This is Netherlands.
There's lots of companies in the Netherlands, like tech companies and big oil companies and all that kind of stuff, so the
pensions that Royal Dutch Shell are kicking out are probably pulling that right up.
But that's what I mean, them and a thing as well, see the Merchant Navy, like, so pretty much all the big Merchant Navy companies that are all doing all the shipping and stuff like that, because of where it works and hub and all the other bits that go like, in history, it just means that there's a lot that's pulling that up there, so I get probably where that's coming from. But the next three, I mean, I can't begin to stress how fucking, like, see the Italian national pension. There's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said negative about Mussolini.
Fucking hell, Paul. I refuse to associate Italy's pension with Mussolini. Yeah. Although it may well be. I don't know enough about the history of the place. Canada are doing.
He was a nationalist.
Canada are doing fucking hell, Paul. Canada are doing pretty well. Us like Voldemort.
Aye, like Voldemort and J.K. Rowling.
Serious retconning going on there. Canada and. Canada's almost 50-50 on the state to occupational split, although it's slightly in favour of the state. Then you've got Portugal and Spain, which are purely state pensions. This is all making up the top 10. You've then got Ireland, which is
50-50 split, really.
Roughly, and the US, which is about 50-50. Turkey, which is the last one in the top 10, and it's purely state ran.
It's amazing how much money your state can have when you're buying like loads of cheap oil after Esh and shifting it to other folk.
Yeah. But essentially there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. There are 22. So like I said,
so we're essentially we're at the top third of that. Like,
yeah, we're at the top of the
first third.
Yeah, or the last third.
Aye, or like the
shitest
the shite end. We're at the top of the shit pile.
And in terms of the EU, there are one. In terms of state provided from the EU, actually, I don't think there's anyone, is there? Nobody in the EU provides a worse state pension than us.
No, and I would also say that see if you take something like Italy, the cost of living in Italy
is much cheaper.
It's definitely it's definitely no more than it is in the UK. We've demonstrated that in the various other things that we spoke about by a long way, and it's kind of. I would highly recommend, if you're listening to this, to go and look at the graph, because the staggering difference between what the Italian government give to pensioners to what we are asking our pensioners to live off from our government money is because even though this is shown what it is with private and government, there's a bit of falsehood there, which is that's based on essentially averages for your private, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can't guarantee anybody's got that. So in actual terms, that's pulling the fucking bootstrings of fucking Britain real up, because there's lots of people who won't have a pension anywhere near that, that are just getting that low. And if you actually then just took it from the government pension that you were getting, Britain is real fucking low in this scale, like real low. And Italy's still, well, at that point, Italy's like the top. Do you know what I mean? If you were to remove what you could have, this is what you could have won, depending on what job you had. Italy would be at the top from national. So you, as a pensioner, you know, when people talk about how do people in Italy live so fucking long, it's because see at 80 when you're getting a whole fucking massive of cash off the government and you're living in decent weather and eating olive oil and stuff like that. Does it sound terrible?
Not but fuel poverty.
Don't have fuel poverty.
So in terms of the claim from the article that we had, the fourth worst pensioners in Europe, if you're taking,
I don't think the claim was we had the fourth worst pensioners, although I like that claim. Pensions.
If you're looking at the total pension, including occupational and statutory, we are the fifth worst in the EU countries on that graph. If you are only taking into account the state-funded section of that, we are the worst by quite a distance.
I mean, there's very few countries in the world on that list, on the developed world, across the board that are worse than us for giving money from the government to the pensioners. So
we're getting into the last couple of things that we're going to look at here, and the next one that we're looking at, the second last one, is it says it's Britain which has the 8th biggest gender pay gap in Europe. Now, since then, and these stats that we are looking at come from data in February 2019, so it's quite recent. Yeah, so it's pretty recent data, right? And it's looking at the unadjusted gender pay gap. It's it says data from 2019 up the top, but then the title of the graph is the unadjusted gender pay gap 2017.
So I think that the data is probably from 2017 and the article has been published in 2019, and whoever done the publishing has wrote the wrong words.
Yeah, fuck them. Oh, is there a name on the article? I wanted to name and shame them, but I can't. It's on Eurostat Statistics Explained, so it's quite a good graph anyway. So basically the claim is that we were the 8th worst gender pay gap in the EU. The reality is that we are now the 4th. So we're doubly as bad. We're not doubly as bad, but we've certainly moved up the table in terms of our gender pay gap.
Is that the horrible graph that I sent you? The one that's got all the letters at the bottom where you have to determine?
No,
or is that
it's just from the same.
Right, cool. I was wondering.
So outside of the EU, other European countries such as Switzerland, Iceland, Norway all have a lower gender pay gap than us. The Euro area has a lower gender pay gap than us, and the EU 28 on average have a gender pay gap of 16%. Our gender pay gap in the UK is 20.8. The only 4 countries in the EU who are doing worse than us are Germany at 21%, Czechia or the Czech Republic at 21.1%, and Estonia at 25.6%.
Estonia on that graph looks real bad in comparison, doesn't it? I mean, don't get me wrong, the UK's fucked, right? We'll get back to that, but like Estonia on the graph looks real bad, doesn't it?
Does look pretty bad, yeah. Does look pretty bad. Whereas Romania has frighteningly low gender pay gap.
Low. So Jerry feels there should be more.
I just like, obviously it's my prejudice, but I would have expected it to be higher. If anyone was wondering what that weird noise was, it was me cracking a bottle of bucky.
And if anybody's wondering why you didn't hear me do that, it's because I'm halfway through a bottle of bucky, and that's why my terms have been much more loose.
So yeah, so the kind of best.
Who's running next to Romania?
Luxembourg, Italy.
Luxembourg are smashing it. Pretty much
Italy are doing pretty well in the last few graphs as well. So they're only at 5%. Belgium at 6%, and you've got Poland, Slovenia.
Poland as well. Poland consistently are doing well in all the graphs that we've been looking at. Here, people, what you want to do is move to Poland to get yourself a job. And then there'll be Polish people saying those Brits coming out here taking our jobs, and then there'll be a trope about that in 10 years' time.
Yeah, train as a plumber and go over there and fuck the system.
No, just plumb.
All right, okay.
Don't fuck the boiling system.
What ifs.
I've put in a new boiler system. I'm going to go and fuck it now.
But yeah, like in terms of countries who have better gender equality in terms of pay, you've got Austria, Slovakia, Finland, Portugal, Latvia, France, Lithuania, Netherlands, Spain, Denmark, Hungary, Ireland, Cyprus, Bulgaria, Sweden, Greece, Malta, Croatia, Slovenia, Poland, Belgium, Italy, Luxembourg, and Romania.
So
and that's basically, yeah.
Empty. Literally empty.
So, I mean, the general theme of the entire show is that we are completely underperforming across the board in terms of any metric by which you would measure a successful country.
It's why you get that really. It's why that upsetting rhetoric, that whole. But with the fifth richest economy, I think, but it doesn't mean anything if you're not doing anything with it.
Yeah, it doesn't translate into better lives for the people of the country.
Like, and actually, in almost every case, we've been able to demonstrate that in the last 5 years, we have not in any way, shape, or form got better, or even if we have got better, we've not got anywhere near the best, and in many cases we've actually got worse than we were. Like, so even though we've had, regardless of the elections and stuff, even though we've had a consistent government, as in it's been the same party and ideally the same leadership
As we all
model.
know, there ain't no party like an S Club party.
S standing for Conservative.
Alright, I thought it was for SS.
Well, I mean, there ain't no party like a Nazi stormtrooper party. That's what they used to say in Germany.
That is true.
There's none like that, and we're grateful for that.
I mean, there's parties like the Nazi party, potentially.
Fucking Brexit party is a good example.
That's hyperbole, Paul. Hyperbole.
Is it?
I think so.
We're going to get threats of legal action off that one, and all.
Because nobody thinks that they've got any power. Nobody's actually voting them in.
Is that not happened with the Nazis? And
no,
then
they
just stole power.
They got any power.
They managed to convince people to do the whole first past the post thing.
They got a decent percentage of the vote. I think it was proportional representation that they pushed towards, wasn't it?
Why is proportional representation? So
I mean, realistically, if we had proportional representation in the UK, then in 2015, UKIP would have got a fifth of the vote, I think, or thereabouts. They never performed anywhere near those numbers in Scotland, which is something I'm fairly proud of. However, the last sort of metric that we were looking at, and
this is the one that we have to actually point out. We feel in this article isn't correct, right?
Well, I mean, there's definitely been some things which have happened since then. Oh, you mean the Adams article doesn't seem to be correct? Yeah, I would say so, because it was claimed that.
And the thing is, not a madness. It's not like we're doing this because, like,
no, we're just holding it to account in the same way that we would hold anything to account.
And if Adam wants it right to reply.
But the claim was taken from radicalindependence.org, and unfortunately, the domain is no longer in use.
Is that really like? Because I'm looking at your screen, just like, why is that up on your screen? Like, Jerry, you better be clicking on that Barbados map option that's there on your screen.
So it's hard to verify the initial claim, where it came from and how accurate it was. So all we can do is look at the data which is currently available to us, and the data currently available to us seems to show that the claim is not correct. So in order to illustrate that, I suppose I should probably tell you what the claim was in the first place.
No. Let's just talk around it vaguely.
And the claim was that it should be no surprise that Britain has the lowest level of trust in our politicians. Now, we have...
Can I just say, before you go any further, it should be of no surprise. I agree with that statement. It should be of no surprise.
Now, the only place that we were able to find a good index of trust in politicians, and granted, so 2010 was a low point for the UK. It was down at 55% of the population did not trust politicians.
It's GCHQ.
We are now oddly up fairly high, and we've went from rank 23 in 2007 up to rank 17 of 137 countries. So it seems hard to argue that we were ever the lowest, even in a developed world.
But wait, I've just realised, as you've said that, because I've heard you say it in a process, what you're saying, of the 23 that's there at the point in 2007, how many of those 23 were European countries?
Well, it was 2014 the claim was made, and it's hard to know.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. So we could have been quite low in European countries because these are essentially OECD countries, right?
2014 shows that we were 19th in the world. Now, given that some of the highest in the world, for example, Singapore's currently ranked number 1 now. I would argue that the main reason for that is that people are scared to...
Fucking terrified of their government.
And you will find that actually places like Saudi Arabia and the UAE come very high in these as well. So that means that actually we are probably in the top 15 or more.
If you strip away ones that are being led by dictators, so like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's on the list, but if you strip away your North Koreas, your Myanmar's, you know what I mean, the ones that they can't talk out against the government, China,
But
I'd imagine.
even if we look at the current state of play, I chose some countries which we are roughly comparable to. In my opinion, ones that we would use to...
I know what ones are comparable in your opinion, yeah.
Like the Netherlands has a higher level of trust in their politicians. Interesting, and this is from 2017, so it may well have changed in the past 2 years. I don't doubt that it has, considering that the United States is slightly above us in terms of public trust in their politicians. Germany also is. Ireland is slightly below us. Belgium is significantly below us. They're ranked at number... Why is that not coming up? Fuck you. Did you see that come up there when I hovered over it?
It was just like, do you know what, Jerry? I'm not telling you.
I'm not going to do it anymore because you're live.
You fucking Flemish prick. You're live? We're live?
Oh, we're not live.
Jesus, we should never do this live.
Yeah, so Belgium's actually 32nd.
See if
And France is
we
like...
get 50 requests to do a live show. Me and Jerry will do a live show.
What do you mean? Like a live podcast?
Aye.
All right. Okay. I mean, I think the people seriously need to question why they would want that. But France is 44th.
People
People who are listening. So France is 44th. So we can see there, demonstrably, the UK has, in terms of opinion polls and whatever, a far higher level of public trust in politicians than most of the countries that we would compare ourselves to.
Luckily, though, that's because we didn't vote for a terrorist sympathiser.
Oh yeah, then people would have been real mad at old IRA Corbyn. Anyway, so I mean that kind of
Ira Corbyn. Is that his mom?
So that brings us to the end of our kind of dissection of that article, and it brings us to the end of our dissection of where we are in terms of the rest of the developed world, in terms of the rest of Europe, in terms of all the metrics that you would kind of measure
Not
countries'
great.
success
Really,
by.
is it?
Not
Not
great.
great.
Not great at all. But I think we've probably got some other things that we want to get off our chest while we're here.
Absolutely. So, as I had alluded to earlier on, one of the things that we have to speak about is Stormzy and the language that's being used around him. There's a couple of components to this. It's not going to be a shock to anyone who listens to us regularly. One of our close friends for a start, is gay, and he's also mentioned that even though that Stormzy is we'll get all the way through it, right? But what I was going to say is, so Stormzy is a left-wing sweetheart at the present moment. There's a lot of people coming to his defence. One of the things that he's highlighted, like our friend has highlighted, was that Stormzy has previously used lots of homophobic language in both his rap and on social media and stuff like that. Now, I'd like to say, this is before we get to the whole Stormzy bit, because I don't want people just being like, but he's this, but that. It has been pointed out by people that he has made apologies in the past for that. Now, I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that but I don't know what else he could have done. He has in the past said that he has grown as a person. He realises that language he was using, the way he was using language when he was an angry young man, when he was focusing his anger in different ways, and essentially he has grown as a person and said sorry. Now, whether or not the LGBTQ community agree with that or not, I don't know. I know that he is certainly now, or seems to be now, a proponent of helping forward in the LGBTQ community. Whether or not that is then deemed as okay, I've not actually had a conversation with our friend about it since that information was shown to me, and certainly I know shown to him as well and come to light.
But he certainly seems to have apologised for his previous language.
He seems to, and as from my point of view, as a non-persecuted group, you know what I mean, essentially, other than the fact that both me and Jerry grew up on the Catholic side of Christians, we are white Christian males in our fucking 30s. In the grand scheme of things,
Can't even hurt our feelings.
I mean, you can't. I mean, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, yeah, that's because we don't have feelings, because we're white Christian males in our 30s.
And especially when Celtic have just won like the third treble in a row.
Fucking Rooney's not, no, but but in actual terms, like we do fall under a bracket of, like, we are the luckiest group of people on earth regarding the opportunities that are available to us. There are very few things, like white Christian straight males fucking in their 30s fucking for the UK.
I'm impressed.
I know you're no, like, I know,
Let
like,
me know what to have sex with me.
I've never said that.
No, me neither. Me neither. But there are people out there saying it.
Some of them get neck beards. No, I've got a real pure quality man beard. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But
No, I've got a personality.
Ah, fuck.
I cock like a baby's arm. Sorry. Right.
But my point being, I don't know where he stands with that, but in the grand scheme of things, he's apologised. Now, to me, I don't know what else he could do other than apologise. Now, getting back onto this other scenario.
So we talk about how it came to prominence in the press. How people, why were people talking about Stormzy in the first place? How did it come up?
He has essentially said that Britain is racist.
Right, but he was asked the question: Is Britain racist? And he said,
yes,
definitely, 100%. And that was then packaged by the tabloid media as Stormzy says Britain is 100% racist. Now, if I said to you, Paul, does the UK have cheese? And you said, aye, 100%. And then I went, Britain is 100% cheese. Then that would be weird.
It would be. And also,
it'd be out of context and wrong.
But also, I think that we have to look at the fact that, so see if you are a white guy or a white woman, but mostly, as it seems to be with the issue here, a white guy who's like Christian, and like I said, in his late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, in that kind of area, just like, Britain's no racist. Do you know why you think that? Because you're a white guy in Britain, right? And see if you think if you think it's racist, why don't you go back to your own country, to a guy who was born in the UK? You're a racist. You need to know that.
Also, is it not weird that the same people who don't like Stormzy also don't like
this post that's fucking quality?
Also don't like Diane Abbott.
I don't like other black people.
Yeah.
Like,
or Meghan Markle.
But it's got nothing to do with the fact,
or Raheem Sterling.
But it's got nothing to do with that. It's because they don't agree with their political beliefs, or they don't agree with what country they come from.
That's because their political beliefs are, oh, like black people are much.
Exactly. And this is where the problem lies. Like, the thing is,
now listen, also I would like to say that I know that there are people out there with very real concerns about immigration and stuff, and who live in communities which have large immigrant populations, and it's like, oh, this is affecting me, I'm a wee bit worried about it, blah 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 blah. I'm not having a go at those people for how they think. I would like to have a conversation with them about why they shouldn't be so concerned about that. However, I don't think it's fair to completely delegitimise all their concerns. What I will say is that somebody on Twitter who just happens to not like Meghan Markle and Diane Abbott and Raheem Sterling and Stormzy is probably a racist, and I don't think that's out of order to say that. I think it's fairly obvious that all of the objects of their hate tend to be black folk, and also all the folk whose tweets and stuff they tend to like are like Katie Hopkins and Tommy Robinson.
I was just about to mention that, Mutant. Right, so see, so we're clear. I don't think anybody's going to be shocked. Me and Jerry, no massive fans of Katie Hopkins, and further than that, see, you know, that way where there's some people I will bite my tongue about, and there's some people just like she's a fucking moron, right? She's a grade A fucking moron. She doesn't deserve to be given the fucking. She doesn't deserve to be given
oxygen of publicity, which we are currently giving her.
I know, but the only reason I'm bringing her up is because she made a statement about Stormzy, which is just like, why don't you fucking talk? She didn't say it that way because that would be me typing it, but she said, why don't you talk about how black kids are stabbing black kids in London? And as it was pointed out, when he performed at Glastonbury, he wore a stab vest that was decorated by Banksy to highlight the fact that black kids were stabbing black kids in London. He does talk about it. Just because you're a fucking mutant, just
because she was listening.
And just because she's a fucking pelter. She's a fucking pelter. She doesn't deserve the time of day or fucking oxygen. She doesn't. And I know we're giving it right now, and so we're clear, that'll be the only time I will ever have the sentence that says I'm giving it to fucking Kate Hopkins. Right?
So here's another pelter that we should maybe talk about. Stuart Campbell, the Reverend Stuart Campbell from Wings Over Scotland. We're going to talk about that. We recently, as in Saturday past, received the threat of him A, calling the police, B, calling his lawyers, and then C, calling the police a second time.
I think it was two different police. So I think the first time he was going to phone the police, second time he was going to phone the lawyers, third time he was going to phone Sting and ask them to reform the police so they could perform at a gig regarding the lawyers coming to see us.
Alright, okay, fair enough.
And the best post from all of that was when somebody tweeted just like, you should probably send a message in a bottle.
It's been a year has passed since I broke my nose.
It's been 1 year since I broke my nose.
Since I broke my nose. That's the words, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, no one would ever wish a broken nose upon Stuart Campbell, for example, or anyone. It'd be an awful thing to think. So what I would like to say is that we are not accusing Wings or Stuart Campbell
of anything. We have asked
any impropriety. We have simply asked what I think is a very reasonable question, which is, of the roughly £1.2 million which you claim to have brought in to your independence fighting fund, in inverted commas, because that's what it's called on his website. As far as I can tell from what you have stated on your website where money has been spent, there seems to be a gap of around £780,000 which has not been yet spent, which is presumably saved somewhere for future campaigning or whatever else it is that Stuart chooses to do with it. So the three questions I have are threefold. Either one, what has a percentage or all of that £780,000 been spent on? Two, if it hasn't been spent, has it been kept in your own personal account, or do you have a holding account for those funds? And three, what legal entity are you operating under in order to perform all of these duties? Those are the only three questions, and there may be quite simple answers to all of them. We have asked him several occasions. Every time we have asked him, both on the Wings Over Scotland account, we were blocked for asking those questions. When we asked his personal account at the weekend, because Wings Over Scotland has now been removed from Twitter due to issues with some of what many people would consider to be transphobic statements on that account, he has been removed from Twitter. He is now operating under his personal account, so we asked the questions again. I think the main reason that the questions were asked the second time is because there was an implication made by both him and Jeggett, this guy who blogs from Dublin, about Scottish independence in much the same way that Stuart Campbell blogs from Bath about Scottish independence.
It's like, you know, the way where like I blog all the time about Catalonian independence, even though I've got fuck all to do with it because I live in a different country. I'm just saying. Just like if I lived in a different country, it wouldn't be my place to be involved in much the same way as I stand with, say, like,
but if you were
Billy
Catalonian,
Connolly. No, but Billy Connolly or Sean Connery, even though they're Scottish, because they spend literally the entire time not in the country, I stand with the fact that they should really not get themselves involved in the Scottish independence argument because they're not there. That's just my stance on it. And by the same basic ground, if, say, you lived in Dublin or like Bath or whatever, you probably shouldn't be preaching your opinion to people who do live in the country. And especially, in my opinion, see, my issue with Billy Connolly and Sean Connery is they don't live in the country because they avoid paying tax in the country. And when you pay tax in the country, you should have much more of a say. So see, if you're not paying tax in Scotland or the UK or Scotland and you choose to then preach about what the government are doing, but you're not paying towards what the government are doing, in my opinion, then that becomes a bit of an issue. That's just my personal opinion. It's very hypocritical, right? So that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so the reason that we re-entered the argument is because it was suggested by Wings and one of his kind of associates, this Jeggett character. I can't remember what his real name is because he's kind of inconsequential.
He lives in Dublin and that.
But it was suggested that the reason that Wings was being vilified currently by the indie supporting elite in Scotland, which apparently includes us, was
the amount of times we have been added to various lists that definitely do not include us. We're indie supporting elite, unionist, MI6 reporting. I mean, like, there's
things going on there, yeah, which we definitely don't belong to. But it was suggested that any criticism which was coming his way was class based, and it was about him being working class and the folk who were criticising him being middle to upper class. Now,
as we sit in a garage in Wishaw, drinking Buckfast tonic wine,
that irked me somewhat. Yeah, right? I'm going, well, I think you're a bit of a knob sometimes, Stuart. So, and I grew up in a council flat in Coltness, so how do I fit into this narrative? And that's kind of how it kicked off again, and that's why we started asking questions, which we had asked previously. And I was pointing out the fact that, oh look, people who follow Wings, if you ask these questions, you tend to get blocked. Now that might be because he doesn't feel that he should need to answer to somebody who has never donated to his fund, and that's maybe a reasonable position.
But that's the question that was posed to me, which was essentially, what does this have to do with you? Now, the argument that I put forward for that was essentially, I am invested in the independent movement in Scotland.
Me too.
Now, it is made clear by numerous supporters, one would call them zealots, but essentially numerous supporters of Wings Over Scotland, that they are the largest independent blog and they are working towards showing bias in the media and an independent Scotland. So as such, there should be an investment from me in that. At least there should be a mental investment, if not a financial investment, because they are part of a movement that I am interested in.
To be fair, if you hadn't started having a go at folks' genitals, I might have.
No, but this is exactly the point I was going to make, and this is where my problem lies. I would argue that, and I did point this out to the point where it was actually the reason that he blocked us again, that I have arguably more right to have an interest in where donations are going that are defined on a website and defined in various social media as for the Scottish independent movement to fight the cause of Scottish independence. I have much more right to ask questions of where that money is than a random blogger online has to ask about the sexuality or genitals of another man, woman or child on the internet. Like, certainly that has to be the case. Like, I have more right to say, this is a thing that we're all part of, that you're saying this is going to help move towards. Me asking that, surely I have more right to do so than any one person has the right to.
You have a clearly defined interest.
And the thing is, I like 4 years into doing this nearly, and with the.
Is it as long as that?
Yeah, aye, man.
Oh,
well, think about it. We were a year in before we'd done the first byline, and we've done 2 bylines, and we're just getting to the end of this year.
I'd say it's about 3 years.
It's called 3.5, right? But the long and short is, regardless of that,
Long.
doing this for as long as we've done this, right? I'm like, people can absolutely, definitely, 100% see my opinions and where they stand and stuff like that. I have an investment in that. I have much more right to then ask, where is the money going that is meant to be helping fight for the cause that we're working towards?
Because potentially,
that anyone has asking who's pissing in what bathroom.
Because potentially, if it hasn't been spent fighting independence, and nobody's claiming that it has, but if it has, because we don't have an answer to that question, then that's money that's been taken away from another place it could have been spent that definitely would have been pushing for that. And it's a considerable amount of money.
Well, exactly. And one of my other things, genuinely this happened. So there was a post that was deleted as it got posted, and I tried to reply to it and I couldn't reply to it before it was, not by Mr. Campbell by any manner of means. I'm not suggesting that. But someone else posted and tagged him in it. I'm not saying he got told to pull the post, but it said, well, maybe Mr. Campbell, it said his Twitter handle, and as you can probably imagine, I don't want to fucking advertise him here in the nicest possible way, but is actually supporting women, unlike the SNP, who don't seem to be doing that anymore. So obviously the reply that I was in the middle of writing was, at Nicola Sturgeon, at the SNP, can you please confirm that you do not support women in any way, shape or form? And by the time I had hit enter, that post had been deleted and removed, because someone had told him to ring his fucking neck in because you can't even making outlandish claims.
Wind his neck in.
I know.
No, ring his neck in.
Like,
someone had told him
I was fucking listen, I had thought it. Right, but my point being, at that point, someone has said you should delete that post because there's absolutely no way you can prove that the SNP don't support women. Like you can't. And I was so close to getting the fucking reply out before it was deleted because there was such a tiny time gap between that being posted and me typing it. But my point being was if we claimed that any money that came to us was going towards a specific thing, and we then didn't do that, we should be held accountable for that.
100%, and we would be entirely transparent about it.
We have told, much the same as like we have told, and all our patrons know and everything, that any donations that ever come to us go towards new equipment for here or getting us to live shows and stuff like that to do that type of stuff, and that is it.
Yeah.
We will not take any. We don't take any money out for personal anything at all.
The one time we used it for charity last Christmas, we asked everybody if they were okay with
doing
it.
Yeah. But we won't take it out other than that because that's not fair. Now, granted, we are not turning over 1.2 million quid or whatever in donations.
And but another thing that's we've been accused of is jealousy, right? Now, the thing that I would say to people is, if he is spending all of that money on Scottish independence, what do I have to be jealous of?
I know. I mean, this is the thing that I've got.
That's a great thing. That's something that I would wish for. If he's spending it on himself, then I might be personally jealous that he has all of this money that I don't have.
He's got $1 million quid to fucking.
But that shouldn't.
But that should never be the case. That's it. Like, I'm not jealous. I mean, the only thing that I could arguably be jealous of is I don't have the stuff available to me to be able to put $1 million into making Scotland independent. Be jealous of that. But right now, as things stand, because of the things that have been defined, as far as I can make out, only about 300 or 400,000 pounds worth of that has actually been used towards that. All the rest of it has been not
it's resting in an account somewhere,
which might be the best meme that you fucking posted.
However, we give Reverend Stu Campbell, in inverted commas, the benefit of the doubt.
And the right to reply. It's more than welcome on the show. As we've said on numerous occasions, I mean, we've been banned from literally every account we've got, and all the accounts he's had, we've all been banned on. He's more than welcome on the show to talk about it. We're all part of the same movement.
Anyone who questions him or asks difficult questions or asks him where he spent this money or asks him different things that he doesn't like just gets blocked. And not only do they get blocked, but he encourages his followers to use the same block list which he publishes. He publishes a list of Twitter handles and says you should block these people. So from the outside, it might seem like he is trying to prevent people from seeing information which might have a negative effect on him.
But the thing is,
I'm not saying that's the case, but that's how it might appear to somebody.
And as we're offering to invite him on the show, it's not like we've not had prominent figures who are towards that. I mean, obviously we've had Dan McGarvey on twice, we've had Deep Sinclair on, we've had Mike from Bell Caledonia on, we've had Jennifer Jones. I mean, we've had proponents of Scottish independence
Stuart
on.
McDonald,
Stuart McDonald,
SNP,
who is literally
MP.
an SNP MP.
Although,
you know what I mean?
let's not forget that Wings Over Scotland essentially accused him of being an MI5 operative.
I'd be a psychotic thing for anyone to say, because we're all fucking adults, and literally he's a fucking great guy to be fucking hanging about with. But from someone who grew up in various parts of military families and stuff like that and knew people, he wouldn't be my first go-to for MI5, is all I'm saying. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's fucking great fun, do you know what I mean? But like he doesn't scream spy, you know what I mean?
Doesn't scream able to keep a secret.
And then I suppose we'll love you shirt, but you know what I mean? Like, but genuinely, like, I mean, like, it's not like we've not had lots and lots of well-known proponents of Scottish independence who are both in the public limelight. And, like, this is the thing where the jealousy bit doesn't fucking make any sense. Like, in the nicest possible way, Stuart, some of the people who have listed there, Darren and Hardeep and stuff like that, they've done pretty well in a fucking, you know what I mean? It's not like we're not inviting other people, like, you're the famous guy that we're trying to get on the show or anything. We're just asking you to be there, like, because you've got a part of this the same way they've got an invested part in this and would love to talk to you about it, but you've chosen not to want to talk to us about it.
And not to answer a very simple question, which would put a lot of people's minds at rest.
And the thing is, I would say, and I can't be sure of it, but I would say we're definitely, in fact, actually I can't be sure of it to a point, but other people have asked you the same question as well.
I'm being blocked.
I'm being blocked.
So we'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that.
So I think, that's a reasonable episode, Paul.
How long did that take?
It took 2 hours and 40 minutes as per the recording. It took us much longer.
It took us about a week, man.
It was about 4 hours, I think, yeah. But yeah, so it's been wonderful talking to you. Remember that you can find us on www.notanotherfakenewscast.com. You can email us at info@notanotherfakenewscast.com.
You can add us on Twitter, then block us at PGMcast, because that seems to fucking happen all the time. You'll also find, if you go to our Twitter and you look at the bio, you'll find our personal accounts and our website, because we're no hiding fuck all.
And that then goes to our About Us, which has pictures of us and our names and stuff. And links to loads of newspaper articles which have our names and where we're from and stuff. So they claim that we're just anonymous trolls on Twitter.
Anonymous trolls hiding behind a pig logo, or the best claim, because for those who don't fucking follow our Twitter, the best claim that's happened this week, and this actually happened this week, was
from Wings Over Scotland.
Well, from a subsidiary, but that suggests that they're involved in each other, and I can't guarantee that in any way, shape, or form. But Jerry is a transgender woman from Aberdeen. Now, I've known Jerry my entire life as Jerry, the man before me. Not the man before. The man in front of me. Right.
I was before you, though.
You are, slightly.
Oh, nearly a year.
About 11 months. See, me and Jerry are cousins, for those who aren't aware, and because of that I've known him quite some time. I
also always come before him.
That's because he's nice like that. But he waits for me to come.
I like to give him the finale.
He waits for me to come. Like, he's fucking considerate. No, but the long and short of it is, I've known him my entire life. At no point has he been a transgender woman. But they accused him of that. That's because there's other people.
You say accused, that makes it sound like it's a bad thing.
No, but what I mean is they were just like, are you? And it's like, are you saying that I am? No, I'm not saying that I am, but I'm asking you, are you? And they were doing this before.
There was that, but then there was also the person that was like, oh, I know who they are. They're these people from the Aberdeen independence movement, and here's the chairwoman, and here's the marketing officer or whatever it was.
All the people who have listened to our show, they would be very aware that at least one of the two of us is not a fucking fan of Aberdeen. And if I was to choose to be I would, in the nicest spot, sorry Aberdeen independence movement, who now know we exist because of all this shit that's happened.
And we're actually going to have Fiona Robertson, who's the equalities convener for the SNP. We're going to have her on the show to tell her side of this story.
But before, but as I cut all ties with this, what I'm going to state is of all the places on fucking earth that I would choose to pretend to be at Windermere, Aberdeen, you're all aware of that. It's grey and cold.
And on that bombshell, I think
There's no bombshell there. People are just like, Aberdeen grey and cold.
I think we're ready to say goodnight.
Aye, I suppose so.
Peace out.
Gadget.
Ding, 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 ding.